Gasworks Museum, and the next 10 minutes is yours to monopolise as you will.
Right, we'll try to be brief. I have with me here today Glenn Babington, who's another member of the Trust, and this is always an opportunity for us to thank you for the council for the support that they do give the Dunedin Gasworks Museum. In particular, as per our submission that I've given you there, particularly for this year, the provision of an interest-free loan to cover the cost of the building. An update on that is that it is being built at cost in Christchurch, and we understand that that boiler should be back ready to be commissioned in the next week or two. So that's good news for us, because at the moment nothing much works at the gasworks without steam, so that's been good. We also appreciate the continued allocation of funding in the annual budget for the maintenance of buildings, and for contracting the Lou Robinson as an engineering consultant to give a detailed assessment of the structural integrity of the site. We were particularly appreciative of the upgrade of the toilets for the Gasworks 150th celebration. That just made such a difference to the whole running of those events, from which, I think we learnt a lot from running that celebration, in that what we could do with that Gasworks as a venue, so that was particularly good, and the toilet upgrade certainly added to that. And also, the support that you've given us with allowing a member of the Toitu Otago Settlers Museum to come and do work with us, and that's been very successful. So really, our submission basically is around the continuation of that annual allocation of the $50,000 for general maintenance of the buildings. It's quite critical. The buildings are old. They've got quite a bit of deferred maintenance on them, I think, and I suspect they might be a bit susceptible to an earthquake too. And also, the other thing that we're requesting is a budget allocation based upon this engineering consultant's report to enable the immediate commencement of any strengthening, watertightness and restoration work to be done around that engine house, Anderson's room area, which is visibly in quite a state of disrepair, and I think there are some safety concerns there for us. So, and also any work needs to be done on the chimney. We see this as a priority in our submission, that funding is allocated to ensure that work is done. We're also asking our annual request for some sort of operational budget, bearing in mind that there's most probably not one museum in the country that makes, is profitable and is regarding support. But I do think we've sort of plateaued a little bit in that I just sort of feel that, and the board feels that if we did have some part-time administration and marketing help, we could most probably move this museum even further. We're all volunteers, we've all got other jobs and that sort of thing, and it would be, if it would be possible to actually give an allocation, even if it was just for a short term, to see whether it works, we would be most appreciative. I think, as a trust, we're fiscally responsible. We don't have a lot of money to waste or anything like that, and I think that provision of a budget for some of these operational matters would really assist us a lot there. I just also like to, at this stage, thank John Bissett for the work that he's and support he's given the Trust while a councillor, and we welcome Lee Vanderlist onto the Trust as the council representative. And also, I think the other person we'd like to thank is Robert Clark, who I understand has left the council property management division, but he was very, very good in giving professional help and support to the Trust and to the museum. And I suppose we're concerned that we have somebody within the council who is going to continue that support for us, particularly with the sorts of issues that we've got with strengthening and room tightness and that sort of thing. So we'll just to this submission. I'm going to finish there, knowing that you people are a bit behind time. If there are any questions, we would welcome them.
Okay, questions, councillors? Councillor McTaggart.
I'm just wondering the engineering consultant's report that you refer to in here, how far is it from completion, do you know, or is it being led by our property division?
It's been led by your property division. We have not seen, I understand the report's been done, but I have not seen, the Trust hasn't seen it.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Peake.
Thanks, Craig and Glenn, for your work there. Just that reference to the Energy Eco Centre, I just wondered if you could give us an update on where you're at with that.
I understand that Lloyd Smith is going to come later on to, if he has got time. I know he's got a clash with another meeting to provide information on the Energy Eco Centre. We've been a bit distracted with the fact that we've been trying to get this boiler up and running, and also with the 150th celebrations last year. And so the Energy Centre side of the museum has been on the back burner a little bit, and we haven't done anything this year on that. But we do, Lloyd and myself and one or two others do wish to continue with that aspect, because we see that as sort of very much part of that whole energy scene, and looking particularly to, you know, gas and coal and those sorts of things. You don't get much traction today in the sort of market, particularly in the environmental sort of market at the moment with things like that. So we see if we can use the past to look towards the future as being an important aspect of this museum and sort of future energy needs. And the programs that we've run in the past have been very, very successful, and we've involved, I think the good thing is that we've involved, you know, university and polytech people in that. We had a very successful warmth expo where trade people brought exhibits to the fitting shop. So we're hoping to regenerate that, get a bit more and a bit more energy into it.
Just briefly, there has been the ongoing education, so going with involvement with some of the schools coming and doing programs, and the university as well, and summer school.
Yeah, thank you. The New Plymouth Museum, Pukeariki, is a good model for what you're trying.
Yes.
Thank you.
Further questions? Thank
you very much.
Thanks very much. Mark Cummins. Oh, now, yes, this is page 121. It's from the first folder. Oh, you said that, right? Welcome, Mark. Yes, page 121 in the first folder.
Hi, I'm Mark Collins from Asphalt or Environments Asphalt Recycling Dunedin. Has everybody seen the business case what I've tabled before? If not, I can pass them out. Same one, yep. And if I can pass these samples around, it feels like I've just walked into the Dunedin's own Dragons. So I'm a bit nervous. I don't normally speak in public.
It'll be fine. We're worn down after 2.5 days. We're pretty harmless by now.
I'll keep it nice and short. What I'm here today for is asking the council to embrace the asphalt recycling concept, which has been big around the world for the last 30 years. We build this, we've invested $500,000 into an asphalt recycling plant where you put old asphalt in one end, comes out new the other end when we add additives to it. We're now asking the council to change in their tendering process when they issue tenders that half of the asphalt that comes off the Dunedin streets is treated like an asset and recycled at my recycling depot to be put back on Dunedin streets and footpaths, mainly footpaths at this stage, with considerable cost savings to the council. First year I can guarantee we could save $150,000 off the first footpath contract we can do. I'm backed by 3 prominent Dunedin businessmen and 2 other people who are on the national rich list who have no financial interest in it but do like the concept and do see that it's a huge savings what councils can potentially make from recycling. We want to create at least 1 job a month for the next 36 months on people who've had hard starts to life, or mongrel mob kids or black power kids. We believe that we can train them up and give them the work ethic in our own environment crew to lead them into employment, which they can gain up to $30 an hour. In Christchurch or even in Dunedin, there's a shortage of asphalters worldwide. We want to hand something back to the community by giving cost savings to the councils, employing some people who probably wouldn't get a second chance and do need a second chance in life. There's a couple of people I need to thank as well. Evan Matheson from the roading department and Kieran Trainer have pointed me in the right directions on where to go and how to table this report and get to where I need to go to. And Doug Hall, who's my next door neighbour in Pike Valley Road, where I do my asphalt recycling, and we've had a few frank and formal discussions. But I thank Doug for his opinion and his time when he has given me over the last 2 years that I've been building this case. We believe in the second year we could save the council at least $300,000. If it was embraced more than that, we could potentially in the 3rd year save over $500,000 on footpath maintenance and resurfacing. The concept isn't a new concept, it's been around for 30 years. I've got a test report in these folders from Fulton Hogan saying that the asphalt, once it's been recycled, comes back to the same standard as Transit Mixed 10 Transit New Zealand specifications. I believe I can give back to the community and create more employment the more that the council embraces this recycling idea. At the moment, the asphalt that comes off footpaths is treated as a waste product which is dumped into landfills or crushed and spread back on the road as a road base, which only benefits the contractors who have it. We would like to have a percentage dropped at our gate so we could recycle it, use it on Dunedin City contracts and pay it forward to the council and other people. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Were you happy to take questions?
Yes, definitely.
Councillor McTavish.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in. 2 questions. The first is that what you're asking in terms of writing into contracts is just for contractors who are ripping up our roads, basically. So it's that end. It's not the other end.
No, it's just the end when it's been ripped up off the footpaths instead of going to the dump or being crushed and treated as a very low grade gravel. We can recycle it into that standard what I've passed around and bring it back up to brand new asphalt standards and lay it cheaper and stretch the road in dollar by at least 20 to 30% more than what they're currently getting. If we only target footpaths at the moment, there's very limited risk to anybody with the product not sustaining up to time, which it will. It's guaranteed around the world, and my bank will guarantee it that we would stand beside our product 12 months longer than any other contract at the moment. A contractor has to do at the moment, with full support of the bank and with 5 business mentors.
So, why just for footpaths? And second question, why just 50%? Why wouldn't we want to be doing 100?
I'd like to do 100% straight away. I think to sell the idea and the concept to the councillors and the greater Dunedin community that footpaths only take foot traffic on them. There's no risk for heavy trucks, logging, any other things. With cycle ways, the unsealed car park at Anzac Ave at the railway apartments, there's a lot of areas where it can be used and put down, and the product is a good product. And I would ask for 100%, but I thought it was a bit cheeky.
And the additives that you put into the process, does that, I mean, asphalt isn't exactly the world's most environmentally friendly product at the best of times, but just checking in that it's not adding additional toxins.
No, by recycling, it eliminates how long you'd have to make virgin mix. You save on greenhouse emissions and gases, less trucks to a quarry because you don't need to crush and cut so many materials. The environmental side of it is a whole new concept, which is benefiting landfills and minimisation of zero waste.
You don't need to convince me on that front, and I don't think you need to convince the residents of Saddle Hill either. But the part that I'm curious about is specifically the additives that you put in terms of the finished product and any runoff that you might end up with into waterways or whatever.
It's added into the machine on the side of Cock Valley Road, and there's actually no risk of spilling into any streams or anywhere else. It's a water-based product. What goes into the asphalt when it's recycling, and sand's added to it, and it is remixed, reheated, and comes out the other end exactly the same as it comes out of a virgin asphalt plant, but only takes 20 minutes to cook 5 tonnes. And with the product at the moment, the asset not being treated or valued to the full potential of what it is going to the waste, and the councils in New Zealand are the biggest buyers of asphalt or chip seal in this industry. The only changes what have happened in this industry in the 20 years that I've been in there is the prices just keep going up and you get less bang for your buck. I can guarantee you that up to 20% savings or up to 20% more work done for the same price.
Thank you.
Councillor Calvin.
Thank you. It looks like an exciting product. We wouldn't usually be in the business of telling the people who do our operations how to go about it, and we certainly wouldn't be in the business usually of telling them to go to one supplier. What we would, and I've only been here a wee while, what I would have expected us to be more in the business of was asking our people for a report into whether we can do better with our Dunedin roads with recycling and whether the product's good and things, and to get our people to respond to that and to then get out there with other options, even if they went to people and said, have anyone else got any options and things. Would you be comfortable with that as a going forward thing?
Certainly would be, and at the moment no one else in New Zealand is doing the recycling because they get a premium $234 a tonne, and while councils still spend money on roading projects and pay retail for the asphalt indirectly through other people, the cost savings are never going to be passed on to the councils, where we believe our product and where we want to aim and grow our business is benefits the community, looks after the assets better. It is recycled. It's one of the biggest recycled products in the world. They save $2.2 billion in the US between 2011 and the current date on recycling just asphalt alone.
Councillor Thompson.
Mark, thank you. It really is interesting. You just answered one of my questions, I think, which is there anybody else in the country who is currently providing this business option?
Not 100% fully recycled asphalt. The two main players in New Zealand can recycle asphalt and put it through their plants. They could do it in Dunedin, but they'd have to spend about $500,000 to do it. I still personally believe they will not pass any savings on to councils. They will just maintain that they are doing it cleaner and greener and supplying a similar product. There's been millions of dollars made out of it in Victoria in the last few years, in Australia, by up to 75% recycling into virgin asphalt plants.
So the barrier to entry into the market, if you like, is the access to the raw material, the waste.
Correct. Yes, correct.
Right. And where it's been introduced in other countries, are you aware of how it's been able to, how have they overcome that barrier elsewhere?
They have so much of it sitting around in America and the UK that it's up for grabs for anybody to grab it. In New Zealand, and the market's pretty protective, I've had to go out and win my own contracts to source my own asphalt off the DCC footpaths to make this operation work. I can no longer buy millings in Dunedin, which is when the machine goes down the road and profiles the road, the millings will come off the road are now going to other contractors who will not sell them to me as they believe it is now too valuable with me having my machine. So I need to source more contracts so I can keep ripping it up and recycling it.
So the value to, in your view, the value to the other contractors is in keeping recycling out of the market. Is that what you're saying?
Correct, yes.
Right. And they because they're able to pass that cost on, in the sense that they're all playing on the same playing field, and they get some cost savings themselves through substituting for some gravel that they would have to put down. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yes.
Do you have any sense of, relative to what you believe this would, recycling the product would save, do you have any sense how that compares with their savings on gravel, using it that way?
Minimal. It's just it saves them carting it to the dump site or having it sitting around in the yards. Gravel is one of the most cheapest products in construction. It's the same with the asphalt millings where it's getting dumped. It is not given the true value or the true economic benefits what it can bring to a city and be recycled. They make their money out of selling virgin asphalt year in, year out, as the councils of New Zealand for the last 50, 60 years continue to buy virgin asphalt where there's a gap in the market for recycling recycled asphalt.
So if council were to remove the entry barrier by stipulating in its contracts that, I forget what the technical name is for it, but what they're stripping off,
yeah, the millings,
has to be recycled. Are we likely then to see them come into the marketplace as well? Because I think part of what Councillor Calvert is getting at is we might wish to facilitate the recycling, but it's a step further to saying that we're going to have a preferred contractor here and you're our man.
Well, potentially I'd work in with anybody or anybody else who had the same idea or the same belief. We could potentially have gates that we can process the product so it's into a fine recycled product, and then we can have gate sales and sell it back to any other contractor who wants to buy it and put it through their asphalt plants and create an income stream which can be paid dividends to the council annually as it goes on. And then the market is a level playing field where anybody can buy it, anybody can do it. If anybody else wants to crush it and recycle and sell it to me, I'm more than happy to buy it off them. But at this stage, no one wants to do that in the Dunedin market.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, can I pick up on that? You mentioned that there seems to be two two areas or two destinations for the millings. One, you've said it's substituted for gravel, and the other, you've said it's been dumped at a landfill. Now, if, correct, you may not know this, so if you don't know the answer, then that's fine, but I understand that when we have a contract with a contractor and they have to take it into the landfill, they have to bill the cost of dumping it into the contract because it costs money.
Exactly.
To dump it into the landfill. They have to pay to do that. So I assume that if they didn't have to pay to do that and they could find a place to dump it for nothing, that their contract would be cheaper in the first place. Is that
Exactly,
reasonable?
yes. Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Staines, did you? Councillor Lord.
So, the text there. And look, my question was, is there anything actually stopping you just wanting your own contracts? If you can do this job 20 to 30% cheaper, is there anything to stop you just taking on some footpath contracts and that sort of thing at the moment? Like just going out
I
and doing
have
them?
done that for the last 18 months. I've secured my own contracts, done it myself. Used, as the time has taken a bit longer to get the machine up and running and had a few speed humps, I haven't had the actual ability to lay enough mix on the contracts to make them feasible to do. I was cheaper than everybody else to win the contracts, and just my timing wasn't quite right to get enough enough asphalt, recycled asphalt on the ground to benefit myself.
Yeah. The other question I noticed, like on the Southern Motorway recently, just overnight, they did some quite big sections, you know, a couple of 100 metres at a time, sort of 2 to or 30 mil deep or whatever. Is that the sort of job that you're capable, or have you got the ability to do that size of job?
We will in time as we grow the business, but initially we just want to concentrate on footpaths and get it right. In America, you can put fibres with the asphalt and give it a structural content, which we can do through our plant as well. They do runways with it. They do highways where what we call a busy motorway. It's like a quiet street to them. They actually do thousands and thousands of tonnes on road networks in Europe and in America and in the UK with recycling, so it stands up, it's stood the test of time. We're 30 years behind the game.
And the work that you've done up until now, is some of that being for the DCC on some various parts? Yes. So our staff will be familiar with what you've done?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, and thanks for your submission, Mark. It's been really interesting actually, and I think Councillor Calvert and Councillor Thompson have alleviated my concerns around creating a monopoly through policy change around recycling asphalt. But your submission, aside from asking for a preferred contractor status, also asks us for a marketing grant.
I wasn't aware they were still in there, no, sorry. I'm not asking for no money, nothing. I'd just like a percentage of the asset, which at the moment is going to the landfills or getting crushed, to have a 12-month trial period at my recycling centre on Cock Valley Road. Guarantee is I can save you 125 grand on your footpath contract, payable in 12 months' time to the council.
Oh, that's fine. I just wondered what that was about. But
Yeah, no, that should have been deleted, sorry.
Councillor Wiley.
Thank you. Great to see job opportunities potentially coming. How many staff do you currently employ?
10,
Okay. Full-time, part-time?
full-time.
Okay. What would stop Fulton Hogan? This is such a great idea, I guess. Councillor Thompson, and stop Fulton Hogan coming along and buying their own machine and doing the same thing.
They perceive me as devaluing the market, and each day they get out of bed, they can still get retail for virgin mix. They have no incentive to change. They've changed in Victoria and in Australia and other parts of the world, but in sleepy old New Zealand, they still say it's too hard to be done, it can't be done. I challenge them, and I'm going to prove that it can be done, and it can be cost effective for the council and myself to do it and grow the business. This is something which could be rolled out to other councils around New Zealand. Christchurch is a golden opportunity. Clutha City Council, there's so many places where we could recycle and save councils money. The only reason the bigger boys aren't doing it, that they get out of bed in the morning, they get $250 a tonne for what they're doing.
Okay. How much do you consider we're dumping at the moment?
Not so much dumping, but wasting and not seizing the opportunity to recycle it and reheat it and put it down on cycleways like footpaths or anything like that. It's probably 90% of it.
No idea why, or
thousands of tonnes each year.
Okay. And one final question. Do you blend it with virgin seaweed?
We've got the ability to make virgin mix, but it's not really that cost effective. We put some sand with it. There's a recipe what you do, and sand goes into it, and a water-based tar product, emulsion goes into it. Very small quantities of rejuvenator is needed to bring it back to certified transit mix 10 asphalt, which the day it's ripped up off the road, it's certified. The product normally itself hasn't failed, it's what's underneath what's gone wrong. And if that hard lump what you're taking off the road, if you've got the machine to reheat it and bring it back to brand new and better standards than what it first came out the virgin asphalt plant is, we're all going to win it.
Okay. The reason I'm just looking at asphaltrecycling.com. It's amazing, you know, Google's a great thing. What sort of volume do you think you can do? Because it looks like here you can save some pretty decent money.
We've just had another bin built, so on site we can store 25 tonne at a time, and I've got an asphalt business which to lay 40 tonne a day by hand would be sensational. Like sort of 30 tonne a day would be a ballpark figure what we'd expect to lay and put out.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for your submission. Really interesting and really exciting. It's an opportunity.
Yeah, and I'd just like working with the council and see where we can go from here and grow it. So thank you everybody for your time.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Right, the next, we're going to take a break now till 4 o'clock, and I understand the next submitter is mountain biking at Otago, and you'd like to set up, take the opportunity to set up a presentation while we're, and can I remind people that the public and any other submitters that there's tea and coffee available out the doorway. Let's get underway again, the last lap. Mountain biking at Otago. Chris?
Yes, Your Worship, Councillor.
The next 10 minutes is yours.
Thank you. Just before I get started, there's a couple of members of the mountain biking committee in the audience here. We have Hamish Seaton. Hamish is the previous president and done a lot of work on tracks and trails around Dunedin. We've got Dylan Sanchez with that, and he's actually been contracted by the club to do maintenance, and that was actually funded by the DCC for a civil grant last year. Mirren Brewster has been working with the digital office on a track application that we're setting up for smartphones. And Derek Morrison there, he does a lot of work on advertising and work through the club with smarts around how we get the word out there. And he's also chair of our track subcommittee. So we've established a subgroup of our overall committee to work on track strategies. I thought the councillors would be ready for a bit of a pretty light show by this time of the day. I want to back up the 4 items that we put through in submission, just with a bit of a roundhouse on what we have in Dunedin as a track resource, what mountain biking has done. I don't usually wear bright jackets unless I'm riding. Definitely don't wear lycra anymore. But the main reason I'm wearing it is we have the Dunedin City Council as a key partner, and I'd like to emphasise that we have a very good relationship, working relationship with key staff. The reason why we have this on our sleeve is we're pretty proud of the relationship that we have, and we hope that can continue and be fostered and grow as time goes on. There's a few challenges with technology, so we'll just see how this all works. Could we get the lights? So this map was done when we put in a cycleways application to government some time ago, just identifying the track resource that Otago has and also really what Dunedin has on the doorstep. If you look at this map here, there's a number of yellow boxes that identify our key resources that we have developed through time as Mountain Biking Otago. We have Nichols Creek, we have Warri Flat, 3 Mile Hill, we have Wakari Creek, it's a mountain biking area, Bethune Gully, Forester Park, Signal Hill, which is our major mountain biking park, and also our Wee Surf and Jubilee Park. All of these tracks over the years have been built through voluntary time and effort and funded through our own club development. 90% of the funding that we've put into the development of these tracks come through a bit more of a business model, so we run a number of events which we'll talk through in a minute or two. We've got a large track network out there, some hundreds of kilometres, and each year we put about $25,000 of our own funding to maintaining those tracks. So this sort of relates to item 1 that I put through in the submission, that we have a partnership with DCC. We've had funding to support our initiatives through civic grants. We know that the council is going through a phase of reviewing its funding initiatives, and we see an opportunity to build a service level agreement with the council through committed funding, and we were asking for $10,000 a year for however long the council would work through to support us in maintaining this network. It is a public resource, it's not private by any manner of means, and it's actually got multi-use, which we'll talk through in a minute as well. So it really is become a major activity area for Dunedin, but not only Dunedin. We're getting on the map nationally as a mountain biking centre of interest, and that's also evidenced by the number of events that we're being asked to run as a club or as a city. This is a bit hard to read, but it's a bit off, so I'll talk through it. This last year we've run a number of different events which have basically been ticked off through lines through them, and we've got a number coming up. Each year we run the Otago Cross Country and Single Speed Championships in December. Usually we focus that in Knavesby. We are involved with Kashi Luke's initiative around an enduro event called the Urge 3 Peaks Enduro, and we are working with the Association of Mountain Biking Otago, and that happens each year in December. There are some sort of close to some 200 riders tied to that this year, over 100 riders. We run the Masters Games mountain biking every 2 years in Dunedin, and this last year we had about 150 competitors across all the events that we ran. We just ran the 10th anniversary of Knavesby 12 Hour, which we run in Knavesby itself. We had over 800 riders sign up for that event. We use that event as a major fundraiser for our club, and that's where we get the majority of our funds that we actually put back into mountain biking, particularly in Dunedin. So we make about $17,000 to $20,000 out of that event each year. We were involved with the Otago Peninsula Challenge, which is happening in a week or so, and we run the mountain biking component of that. We've run for a very long time the Haggis Hunter. It's kind of a 6-hour event, which is really targeted around the local riders, and that happens up in Bethune Gully usually. And this last year we were asked as a club, invited to run the National Secondary Schools event here in Dunedin in October, and we're establishing, going through a phase now looking for sponsorship. We've applied for events funding to assist us with that grant to assist us with that event. And at this point in time we're looking and hoping for around 300, maybe 400 students to attend that event itself. I already have about 8 schools in the North Island interested in bringing a group down, and then talking about doing a road trip down to Dunedin to attend that event during the holidays. One of the interesting tools which some of our geekier riders use is called Strava. It's a tool that you can use with any smartphone or a GPS. This is a wee bit hard to see on the screen, but you look at it, it basically identifies where people are riding, and a GPS locates their route they take. And it's a really interesting planning tool for people interested in this side of things. If we go a little bit more focused around Dunedin, catch through. If you see where the bright spots are, those are actually the wiggly bits that are in the dark mass of the or less urbanised areas of Dunedin are our mountain biking tracks. So we have Wackery Creek basically up on the left hand side there, Nichols Creek that's going up the hill, and Signal Hill on the right hand side. It's really good for us to actually know that people are using our trails, and this is one of the tools that we're using to make sure that we're meeting a market. Forester Park in Bethune's is there, and it's used less because it's more of a technical track area, and also if you look at the 3 mile hill area again, that's a very technical course. So we're getting a lot of really sort of athletic riders riding around the trails for training and generally having a good time out there on the trails. The big track that's going up Signal Hill is called the Big Easy, and that's the first stage of a track development called 3 Peaks, which we've been looking at for a while. We had a lot of multi-use of our trails, and this also shows where runners are running. And again, we get a lot of use of our Wackery Creek track for people running because we've developed around an easy grade. And we even get pensioners using that track as a circuit track for walking every Tuesday around 3 o'clock. So not only is mountain bikers using the trails we develop, but it's across the board. This graph on the left hand side, which you can't see, is basically the number of passes past the track counter that we have. This is for Wackery Creek, but one thing we're seeing across the board, and I won't go on too long, but basically all our trails are increasing in the usage, mainly because we're providing facilities, we're gravelling them, we're providing a really easy ride. And again, that spike there was Masters Games back in February where we had 100 and plus riders going around in circles on it. Nichols Creek track. The interesting thing about this is when we gravel our tracks and we make them easy to ride, we get a major boost in use. And I don't want to step on the previous submission, but we actually use and recycle millings from roads, and we use that to gravel our car parks, we use it to gravel our trails. And the environmental aspect, we actually had all that material tested environmentally to make sure there wasn't leachate coming from it that went into waterways, and it seems to be pretty inert. So we actually take that waste material and we use it without going through any secondary process. It saves us an enormous amount of money regarding the gravelling initiatives for our trails. Dunedin has, in terms of dollars, Wackery Creek was, if you were to basically pay a contractor to build that trail, we estimate around the $250,000 mark. Signal Hill, everything that we've done up there probably works at around close to $500,000 worth of development. The Big Easy trail that we put in, basically it cost $30 a metre, works at around $170,000 worth of track. Nichols Creek, again, about $200,000 worth of investment there. Bethune Gully Forester, it's a bit of a more tactile environment, so less work's gone in there in a sense, and it's about 100 k's worth. And Jubilee Park, which goes back to the very early days when I was involved in the club at the start, probably a lesser value. The Three Peaks Trail that we're looking at further support to maintain this development is probably, if you were to pay for its development tomorrow, it would be $1.5 to $2 million worth of investment. And we've been chipping away on that for the last couple of years. So if we think about our trails, and more specifically Signal Hill, this is our premier mountain bike park. It's a unique environment because there's only two downhills in New Zealand that have a paved road at the top of the course. We have one of them, and another one, Hamish is, where's the other one? Christchurch. Yeah, Christchurch. So South Island's got both of them. But the reality is this makes running events really easily done. So back in 1990 when I was a kid in Ravensbourne, I used to play around on the four-wheel drive tracks. Basically, come 1994, we had an initiative to build some cross-country tracks up there, and they're still evident on the hill, but they're very technical tracks. Basically, from about 1998 onwards, we established a number of our downhill runs. Now, we use these downhills for Oceania's international event. They are characterised as international class downhill runs. Basically, 2009, Hamish and Greg Leo and a couple others established the Big Easy, and that trail itself is one of our more used trails, and it's an easy ride up the top of it. We also invested in a 4-cross track on that area for running 4-cross events, and again it was tied to more attracting events like the Oceanias.
Sorry, what is 4-cross?
Basically 4 riders side by side racing down the hill as fast as they can go over jumps. It's a really good entertainment.
Seriously, 4 bad people that do that together.
Yeah, well, you can see Dylan's in a neck brace there. But no, seriously, he had a tree jump out of him up in Nelson. But it's a really good event, and it basically is one of those sort of premier type things that you add in that you provide service for. In recent years, we've put a lot of work, and Hamish has been leading this work with the Dunedin City Council and Logan Park High School to put a road in and a car park. And this morning there were presentations from the Dunedin Gymnastics Academy and Otago Hockey, and we're working with them, as you heard this morning, to look at maybe a bigger, flashier proposal, and I'll give you a bit of a map of that in a minute. So again, we're looking to partner with people as always. This was our plan that's been basically discussed with the Dunedin City Council staff. We actually are down to parking this quite a distance. We're commissioning engineering reports on drainage, and also looking at the overall challenge of putting the road in. So that is pretty much underway at the moment. We have an agreement with the school regarding access. We have a legal easement, and basically this has been on the go now for 4+ years. We can only really get in there and do this work when it's dry, and that's a challenge as we speak. But the reality is that we're committed to this project, and we're already investing a lot of volunteer time in it. We're also looking at spending around $50,000 investment in it. When the other proposal came along and we were discussing this with Logan Park High School, we saw nothing but opportunity to link to shared services. We can get a road in there and we can get a car park. We already have a gifted pub rooms, a garage, which we're going to put on site. However, the opportunity linking with the gym sports and also hockey provides us potential to have a slightly better area from the point of view of parking, potentially shared services for toilets, lighting. It just adds a lot more bells and whistles that we're probably going to look at funding. So we're kind of right behind that proposal. It causes us a few challenges, but I reckon we can work through that from the point of view of activities within the area. So I think that's all I've got to say. This map here shows you the 3 peaks as kind of the overall approach. The reason why it's 3 peaks, it's got Swampy Summit, Mount Cargill and Signal Hill as part of it. We applied for cycleways funding for this initiative back in 2009. We weren't successful, and I think that's primarily because it was a little bit out of the box as far as the type of cycleway projects they were funding at a government level. I think it's actually right and very well timed for a kind of a resource that could add a huge amount of value to the city. And again, we're asking just generally for council support to maintain the momentum on that initiative. As I said earlier, we've already kind of established sections of this trail. We've done the Big Easy, and at present we receive funding from the Walkways Commission to look at easements through to Claythorne Street, working with the landowner through that process. And we have a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Conservation regarding access through some of their reserve in that area as well. So we're chipping away at that bigger project one way or another. One of the real good partnership projects we've had is with the Digital Office. They supported us through an initiative looking at a smart app location. And one thing that we're lacking in Dunedin is a really good map, or way to get it mapped to where trails and tracks are. And this initiative is smart based, so you can basically look at where the trails are in Dunedin, you can find them, it shows you how far they are from you. And it's a very simple, smart application that Miriam's been leading. And now we've got the sort of Walkery track network in there. We're in a beta testing phase of it. Whenever you set up something like this, there's bugs to bash out of it. But it'll basically be available to anybody who's got a smartphone. And we see that as one way we can give back to the community. We use Twitter to tell people when our trails are struggling because there's a tree across them, old age pensioners walking on them, or more realistically, at the moment they're very damp, and we want to maintain those trails to a certain level, so we want our riders maybe not to ride the Big Easy because it's pretty dirty. And we seem to be getting quite a lot of buy-in to that. So it saves us money with maintenance. So hopefully that kind of gave an overview. So again, the key things we want to emphasise is that we feel there's a room to have a further partnership with the City Council regarding funding long term to assist us with trail maintenance. Being able to pay Dylan to do work while we were focused on the management of things in the club was really essential. And also that relationship with the Digital Office has been really useful, and we'd kind of be disappointed to see the Digital Office sort of be taken off the map for people like yourselves, when we can get an initiative like a trail application up and running very quickly and very easily. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Questions, councillors? Councillor Cope.
There's 2 sort of separate things with a funding agreement, which perhaps I don't know whether you've been told about, but having continuity of funding is a completely separate issue than having a funding agreement, and that the funding agreement could say this is what you would be doing and this is what we're doing, but we're only giving you money for this year, we're not promising you anything for next year. So I take it what you're really wanting is not so much an agreement but a commitment for ongoing long-term funding.
Yeah, like we've worked very closely and we've been successful with civic grants. We've never been a club that goes sort of cap in hand, we try and work things forward, but I think we want surety in that relationship, so if we get committed funding, it means that we can provide a good service level agreement with the council about the tracks that we manage and maintain. So I think that's the key thing for us.
Councillor White.
Thank you for that. One of the things that I really see, your tracks are quite versatilely used, aren't they? I know I've been up there and I've seen dog walkers and everybody. Like, do you have an idea of how much the community uses your tracks?
Yeah, that's why I showed those Strava maps. We monitor the numbers, so we have track counters on a number of our tracks. They don't tell us whether it's a possum, a walker or a biker. But the reality is, just actually earlier today we were talking through the initiative in Logan Park, and the ODT photographer said, please gravel the Big Easy because I run it, and the running community is right behind what we're doing. So we're getting that feedback either way. I kind of keep a watchful eye on things, and so does Hamish. When we go to the car park on a Sunday morning up at Wakaru Creek, it's nearly pretty much always full, and I'd say that maybe 40% of those cars are actually runners and walkers, and bikers come in later on. They seem to get up later in the morning. So we're getting that feedback mostly through the organisations that we talk to, and they're right behind, especially runners. Target Orienteering is setting up an orienteering course at Wakaru Creek because they see it as a really good resource. So we intend to survey our own members, but maybe spread that survey out to make sure we're picking up the feed about who else is using the trail.
Okay. Bit of a side comment as such. Whoever's doing your marketing does a great job because I see a lot of the imagery around in different publications and things. Do you know how many bed nights you roughly bring to town or things like that?
Good question, actually. It's something, again, I think if we go into a feasibility phase for this Logan Park initiative, we need to look harder as a club at how we're driving the economics of Dunedin now. Like the secondary schools event, we're likely, if you're talking 250, 300 children, you have both parents, you have a number of school people coming along to assist with it. So if you multiply that out into the number of bed nights, it's actually quite significant. Oceanias, we actually pulled in a lot of people from overseas as well. It's something we haven't tracked and we should track a bit better so we can put the argument up. Just think about, we have a split. We're servicing our local riders a lot because we're committed to that. But if you look at the economic spin that we put into Naseby each year, it's thousands of dollars go to the township because we run an event. So we do the similar things in Dunedin and we don't clock the numbers as well as we should.
Rotorua gets a lot of the mountain bikers. That's a huge economy for them. Do you see that being able to grow our economy too? You know, obviously.
Yeah, funnily enough, half our committee is up there on a pilgrimage they do every year in Rotorua. We've used that to guide some of the stuff we've done in Dunedin. If there was a World Cup event run in New Zealand that would likely go to somewhere like Rotorua, there's no reason why we couldn't run it here if we had looked forward with regards to the resource that we have. They've had a lot of support from their industry and also their council, and also they have funding initiatives associated with track development, so it's sort of mirrored the same way we're sort of looking forward here. It's a really good benchmark for the rest of New Zealand, right?
Cool, thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
I'm just going to make a statement first and say thank you to your members who came and helped the Strathclyde community. The swimming club recently run an event, it was absolutely superb, and your pictures didn't show that your work is actually into all parts of Dunedin. But I just wondered, can people access that Strava Skype information? So you can just, what do you type in?
You can just go to a website, and it's called the Heat Map. So I can send you the linkage.
Oh, that'd be great, because I just think it'd be interesting to see, have time to analyse it better. Thank you.
Just to build on that, I met with the president of the BMX club. One thing we do as a club, we have a digger, we have a tractor, we have a track dumper, we have about $60,000 worth of equipment, which we loan out to clubs like BMX. And that's something that sits under the radar for our club. We do a lot of support, as you say, to Councillor Wilson, without supporting other initiatives. One of our members, Craig Bates, will always put his hand up to help someone who wants to actually set up an event and see if it's financially viable. We run our numbers on our events very closely to make sure that we don't burden ourselves with costs. However, we run some events that we know will run at a loss, like schools events. They don't often make money, we're not there to make money out.
Really, great.
Councillor Peck.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. You've developed your organisation quite an impressive network of tracks. Do you think it's fully mature yet, or are there other tracks in other areas or different kinds of tracks to go?
The world's our oyster in Dunedin, really. I think that'd be a fair comment. Last year, we realised that we were actually doing a lot and not finishing stuff. So as a committee, we put a moratorium on developing any new trails or tracks because we want to finish what we have. We need to get some of our tracks finished so they're at a level where everybody's happy to ride, so we can walk back from them. If we do that properly too, it means we don't have to maintain them as much. At that point, Signal Hill really could become one of the best mountain biking parks in New Zealand. In fact, it is from a downhill perspective. And there's heaps of room up there to do further work. Coming back to that hub idea, bit of facilities there like a car park, toilets, lighting, would just make that whole area boost as far as its usage goes. Fantastic.
Right, I guess the reason for that question is whether your call to the DCC for maintenance funding is going to increase over the years, or just give us that feel of where you're going with that request.
Let's build a partnership first. But I think we have to be realistic. There's a point where, as a club, we're going through a phase where we're redoing our strategy. We did a 10-year strategy which looked at things like establishing an event. We're at a stage now where we have to think hard about what we can maintain as a club, and also partner with other organisations to make sure we get stuff cheaply. If we do a proper job of our trails, maintenance is actually pretty easy to deal to as a club. The $10,000 that you would invest in would be substantially more costly for a contractor to maintain our trails. We're actually at a stage where we want to do it ourselves because we actually do a really good job and we don't do silly stuff. So we also can do it very quickly, effectively, and we work around the environment. I think 3 years at $10,000 a year would establish a situation where we can provide level service information back, so you can have a conversation about potentially the risk of us doing more stuff and creating more higher financial burden. But I think we're smart enough to do things to fund ourselves, so we can take the edge of it there to council.
Councillor Thompson.
Crystal, is there new blood coming through that to support you guys who? Sorry, I'm not suggesting that. But I mean, one of the things that these kinds of developments, it's not uncommon to see pioneers go and go and go, and then look behind them and discover that everybody else is off riding and there's no one to take over. Are you confident that? Okay.
I think it's a challenge for any organisation at the moment with Generation Y. Should I be involved in that? But if you look across Dylan, there's a younger mountain biker. You can tell by the neck brace. But we're putting a bit more effort into our youth area, and we've been a bit weak on the ground, making it an open environment for people to come in and kind of enjoy being involved in what the club does, and that brings in the younger riders. The relationship we have with the downhill group is really strong, and they're mostly far younger than me, for obvious reasons. And we're doing is putting energy into those guys, so they understand that when you do stuff as a club, more specifically, if you're spending public money, you have to tick the boxes, and you can't run off and do things without thinking it through. And we're getting that coming through now. Our committee is over 12 people active as the committee, and outside of that, we've got about 20, 25 people that are sort of cycling around it. And there's a growing number of younger people coming through. But yeah, you brought up a point. We've recognised that as part of our strategy. We need to get more people involved in what we do. So we've put a drive into our membership. We've got about 150 paid members, which doesn't sound like a lot considering the number of mountain bikers, but there are people that are behind what we do as opposed to just ticking a box. And hopefully through that we gather some people that are a bit younger than me.
Councillor Hall.
Is there any walking tracks that the council have got that you could convert to bike tracks as well as walking tracks? Because most of the tracks you're putting in now are being used by the walkers. So how would you feel about the council allowing you to convert some of the walking tracks into bike tracks as well? And then maybe you just could do all the maintenance and get some more money off the council for the maintenance.
I might ask my Hamish to come on comment on this as well. Years ago I used to come to council meetings and mountain bikers were revered as people that should be talked to. So probably politically we're at a point where we could have that conversation, Councillor Wall. If you think about Ross Creek, it's used a lot by runners, but it could be used a lot by mountain bikers too. So it's one area. We get access to Pineapple Track, run events, and Mount Cargill, and that's really useful for those sorts of events. They're not the sort of trails that fit the need. And we've found building our own trails at the right type for riders has provided the right resource. So it's actually hard for us to convert a walking track into a decent biking track.
What I was more getting at is the council do spend a lot of money paying contracts to upgrade and maintain their walk tracks. So maybe if you know, as a combined thing, is another way you're getting money and council saving money another way around.
Again, as a club, we've got to think about our primary focus, which is mountain biking and supporting that sport. We see a need to contract to keep our tracks under control. I don't know whether we want to shift to an organisation that becomes a contractor of the council. Something worth talking through. That's different. Any thoughts on that, Hank?
Work on it.
Good work on it.
I think that there's a lot of walking tracks around Dunedin, but most of them are multi-use.
Yeah.
There's only about 3 that aren't mountain bikeable, and that's mainly because they've got a lot of walkers on them. There's historical conflict, I guess. A lot of the existing tracks are great to ride in the summer, they're just not that good in winter.
Yeah, I was more getting at the one you're looking at the present time at Cleghorn Street through was originally started as a walk track.
Yeah.
And user virtually might take it over and making a farm-headed track, which is multi-purpose.
Yeah.
No more questions? Thank you, Chris. Really appreciate your submission. And thank you again for all the work you're doing. You and your club. It's much appreciated.
Please, thank you.
Now, Mark Strand. Welcome, Mark.
Hi there.
You have our undivided attention for 5 minutes.
Okay. I was just wanting to submit that the section of the Bay Road should next be improved is the one between Broad Bay and Portobello. I think it's extremely unsafe to walk along there at the moment. In some parts there is no verge at all on the road, and I think that this whole argument is a little bit artificial, because basically everyone seems to want the same thing, which is to get that road widened and the walking track and cycle track completed. But because it's taken so long, there's sort of arisen an argument as to which section gets priority. But basically, I think we just need to get on and do the whole thing. And I think it's become a matter of urgency in some places, because it was noticeable after the first section, through Macandrew Bay, after that was completed, that a lot of walkers were walking through to Broad Bay from there, and you could see that there were a lot more walkers on the road than had been previously, just encouraged by the fact that you could walk at least part of the way. So, and I also think that the quicker this whole thing is done, the more tourists are going to start walking this, rather than just. I don't see it as just purely for residents, and although I think that residents do deserve footpaths and cycleways, as the rest of Dunedin has, but I think it'll become a magnet for tourists when it's complete, at least. And if the plan to do the cycle and walkway right round the harbour is completed, I think that could be a big selling point for this city, and bring a lot of
economic benefit to small communities along the way. And I've heard the idea put forward that there could be a ferry boat ferrying people across the harbour, either at between Portobello and Port Chalmers, or between Harrington Point and Aramoana. And I think this would be an ideal tourist attraction. Could add to the list of the rail trail and the Tyree Gorge and all the nature tourism on the peninsula. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? You'll appreciate that we've had a number of submissions on this and quite a number of questions, and I think Councillor Lord is about to ask Councillor Wilson's question.
Would you be in favour of speeding this up? Would you be interested in paying a targeted rate for the affected people? Would you see that as something that you would be interested in as a Broad Bay resident?
To speed it up?
No, I don't think that would be fair at all. I mean, I think that when this is complete, the whole city is going to benefit from it. And besides, it's only giving us footpaths and cycleways that the rest of the city has anyway. We've never had footpaths. So no, I don't think that would be fair at all.
Any further questions? Thank you very much.
Okay.
Mark.
Thank you.
Rob Thompson.
968.
Now we're going forward here. Mr Thompson has pressing engagement, so we've brought him forward, so it's 968. It's scheduled in at 4:20. We're past now anyway.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. So Dr. Robert Thompson, taku ingoa, no Whakapoti aho. Thank you for hearing my submission, and thank you for allowing me to speak a little bit earlier. I really appreciate it. I'm the coordinator. I'm not going to go through my whole submission. It's here, you can read it. But I'm the coordinator for the Dunedin Collaboration Against Family Violence. And we're a collection of agencies who are actively working in our community to prevent family violence. So some of the agencies like Stopping Violence Dunedin, Women's Refuge, Shakti, Rape Crisis, as well as some of the other social agencies like the faith-based organisations. And Dunedin's a wonderful city. I love being from Dunedin. I love living here. However, we have a lot of social problems. Dunedin has a reputation for violent deaths by family members and partners. We have all of our refuge houses are at capacity and our social services are struggling. We had a meeting today and we were talking about the number of people who are living in squalor and who are living in poverty, who are starving, and a number of people that are living in hedges in our community and who turn up at WINS and at Salvation Army, try to put blankets so that they can stay warm at night. Recently, this year, our community was rocked by the violent death of the Livingston family, and this is not the first time this has happened. How many more people need to die before we decide to do something differently? We all have the responsibility to do something about family violence. We all have personal responsibility to dealing with it. It exists in our community because we let it exist. And after the death, people were asking questions like, why do protection orders not work? Why aren't the police keeping us safe? What's wrong with family court? We really should be asking, why do we live in a community that we need safe houses for people? Why do we need to have protection orders in our community? What do we need to change so that everybody in our community can feel safe? We talk about the numbers. We know that 1 in 4 people are directly affected by family violence. So we're looking at over 30,000 people in Dunedin who are directly affected by family violence. I'm not saying Dunedin is any better or any worse than anywhere else in the country, but certainly some of our recent cases have been very high profile. We cannot continue to ignore these problems and pretend they don't exist. Our annual plan outlines how the council plans to spend pays money on roadings and old buildings. It's argued that preservation of heritage buildings can enhance character, civil pride and identity of Dunedin. However, it's difficult to feel pride in a city that values appearances and buildings over people, or a council that is prepared to spend large amounts of money on temporary structures, such as buildings and roads. What is the purpose of a building? Is it what it looks like, or is it for what it's used for? Many of our old buildings are unused because they really don't meet the needs of our society today. They're pretty cold, expensive to maintain, and inefficient. If a building's not useful and not used by people, then it doesn't make sense to spend millions of dollars in just doing up the outside for appearance's sake. People talk about the appeal to tourists, and for many people who have travelled overseas, and we talk about our heritage buildings, most places have bus stops, and most places in Europe have bus stops that are older than some of our heritage buildings. Te tia, te rito, te harakeki, ke hia te komako e ko. If the heart of the flaxbush dies, where will the bellbird sing? So if the heart of the building, if the people are gone, if the people are sick, then it doesn't matter what the building looks like. We could do things differently. We could decide to value people and community over bricks, mortar and asphalt. We could decide to make Dunedin a family-friendly city. Perhaps we could allocate a small amount of our rates, a couple of dollars from each person. We could do something magnificent. But I'm not really asking for money, even though I think health and welfare of our families and our children is worth investing in. Certainly much more cost-effective to ensure that all of our children have happy and healthy childhoods and then don't grow up to cause other problems. But I want the community and I want the DCC to take the lead in changing the way we operate. If we always do what we've always done, we will always get what we've always got. And that's too many people suffering and in pain. This idea is not without precedent. In the UK, Leeds recently committed to making their city child-friendly. And this got worldwide press and attention. It did this by asking children and people what they thought would make Leeds a better place to live in. They then decided to invest in children and families of the city. And every policy, every activity was designed so that it would be family friendly, it would be child friendly. I've recently come back to Dunedin to raise a family. I did not come back because of the heritage buildings, the roading systems, the museums, art galleries, the stadium, the university, nor the gardens, even though I enjoy these things. I did not come back for job opportunities. As an academic, there are many jobs in bigger cities. I certainly didn't come back for the weather. Even though I love the hills, the bush, the mountain bike tracks, the beaches, there are many other beautiful places in Aotearoa. There are many other beautiful places that have similar things throughout the world. But I came back to be with friends and family. I wanted my son to grow up in a community. I'm very lucky to have these connections. Many of the people in our community don't and are really suffering. So if our community decided that we wanted to be different, if we wanted to create the first family-friendly city in the world, what would that look like? We would certainly be spending a lot less money on crime prevention and social problems. People would want to live here. People would want to bring their families, create jobs and invest because this is a really good place to live. If you talk to immigrants about why they've come and why they've decided to live in New Zealand, it's not for the job opportunities. Most of them would get paid a lot more anywhere else in the world. It's because they want a sense of community. They come for the lifestyle. So we can't compete on with other big cities. And no matter how much money and we invest in trying to get jobs, trying to get businesses to come here, clever PR campaigns about how good it is a place to do business, people will only come because it's a great place to be. We can make Dunedin the most desirable place in the country to live through nourishing our families and communities. He aha, te mea nui o tēnei ao, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. What is the most important thing? It is the people, it is the people, the people. Kia ora koutou.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you for your submission. And can I say the values that underpin it? But one question, can you tell me what Dunedin DCC-owned housing is appalling? Can you direct us to that, because it would be of concern to us if we could find out.
I can follow it up if you like. It was a comment from one of our members. If you like, I can.
Well, I'd appreciate that, because it would surprise you to know that when we survey our social housing tenants, we get in the late 90s satisfaction ratings.
Okay, well that's to be commended. I can just report a comment that other people.
I would appreciate it.
More than happy to do that.
Yeah. Questions, Councillor McTaggart.
Thank you, Rob, for the submission. A couple of things. Firstly, the Dunedin, the organisation you're representing, the Collaboration Against Family Violence, is that can you tell us a little about that group and who is part of that?
Okay, we're funded by the MSD for Family Violence Prevention Network. So we're a network, we're a collaboration of different agencies, such as Stopping Violence Dunedin, Te Ropu Ki Te Tonga, Women's Refuge, Rape Crisis, Shakti, Age Concern, Bernardo's, Plunkett, the Health Board VIP, Mike LaFaso from the DCC is on our part of our group, and also some of the other agencies like Pressure Parent Support, Anglican Family Care, Dunedin Methodist Mission. We have links with the university, so lots of organisations, and my role is really to coordinate action against family violence, so raising public awareness and encouraging people to take personal responsibility, rather than saying family court's not working, rather than saying the police aren't doing their job. Family violence exists in our society because we let it exist, and we all need to take personal responsibility to actually doing something about it. So maybe it's talking to your neighbours. If you witness abuse, if you witness violence, it's about speaking out about it. It's about encouraging people to get help. Many people do our violence education programs. Many people can and do make a change in their lives. Many families do improve. And we can break the intergenerational cycle of violence. And I've worked with many people who have made some amazing change. But we need support from our community to make the changes.
Councillor Bazet.
Yeah, Rob, thanks for your submission, and I could very well be showing my ignorance here, but you're saying that family violence is a huge problem in Dunedin. Now, is it a huge problem because we have more family violence here than anywhere else and we can't cope with it? Or is it a huge problem because we don't have, that it's not a larger problem than anywhere else and we don't have the funds to address the problem? I mean, how bad is, can you explain, what is it's a huge problem? I don't see it myself.
Well, that's part of the problem is we don't see that our refuge houses are full. We don't see that There's 1,000 protection orders applied for a year. We have 1,000 people a year asking for help to change, to stop being violent. And Dunedin's not, if you look at all the crime statistics, it's really not that different from the rest of the country. But I don't think it's good enough to say, oh, we're the same as everywhere else in the country who's particularly bad.
No, I'd agree with that. I'd agree that you can't use that as just and say, hey, because we're not so bad as somewhere else, we're okay. I think violence is violence and we shouldn't have it at all. But I do need to, if you're able to, give us some comparison to elsewhere. Is the violence in Dunedin greater than most other cities?
I don't think it is greater. I think some of our cases are pretty high profile. For example, the Bain, Sophie Elliott, and obviously the Livingston cases are very high profile. But it's not just about money. It's not just about resources. So, for example, the government recently announced some funding, extra funding for victims of sexual abuse and rape. And these organisations do need the money to do their work. But really we should be saying, why do we have a society where we need to spend money on looking after victims? And really I'm coming here not to ask for any more money, but I'm asking for, I'm challenging you to think how we can do things differently. How we can operate as a council, how we can operate as a city, how we can operate as a community where we decide that family violence is not acceptable.
Thank you. Councillor McTavish, did you have another question?
Oh, look, I was just, we staff and myself and Councillor Hawkins had a meeting with another organisation recently that is also operating in the space of child protection and trust, Otago, I think they're called, and they are also interested in child-friendly Leeds and raised those, I think, 12 points that the children of Leeds came up with. And what struck me looking down at was the number of things it spoke to. For example, enhanced ability for young people to safely travel within the city. We've acknowledged that there's an issue in our integrated transport strategy. We're rolling out that work. Similar work around cosy homes, similar work around various different aspects of our social wellbeing strategy. So I'm just wondering whether perhaps it's in part the fact that we're not communicating well, that perhaps you're not familiar with this work that we're doing, or that it's perhaps not progressed to the point that we're seeing outcomes in terms of the work that you do. And would you be willing to be a participant in further discussions about that and how we can make those links perhaps a little bit more strongly?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to be part. And I would love you all to be a part of the work that we do. And I think it's wonderful that you're doing these initiatives. But what I would like to see is that for every single initiative we think about, how is this going to result in safer families? Everything we should do should be about safer families.
Thank you, Rob. Good, appreciate your submission. Right, now we go back to the top of the page. Lloyd Smith. This is back to the top of the last page, Councillors 962. Welcome, Lloyd.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. You're from the Energy Eco Centre?
Yes, and I've brought my little light emitting diodes, one of the most efficient forms of artificial light. Well, the sun is better, but this is one of the best for artificial lighting, and being used very widely in light fittings nowadays. I'm sure you know a lot, you will have seen them but there are many houses in Dunedin that still have the old type incandescent light bulbs. This is something we want to tell people about at the Energy Centre. But as some of you will already know from visits to the Gasworks Museum, the Energy Eco Centre was established in 2011 as a place where people can learn about energy efficiency and ways they can improve the warmth and healthiness of their own homes and workplaces. They can also learn about the history of town gas and other types of energy and sustainability. The Energy Centre is presently organised by a small group of volunteers, some of whom are also involved with the museum. We have capabilities for managing events or expos and setting up exhibits and displays and so on. The Warmth Expo held 2 years ago and a series of talks on energy topics are examples. Now to expand on this, we are seeking partnerships with other people or organisations to develop further programs or activities. The Council's Warm Dunedin program is perhaps an example, so we want to have some dialogue with Council people to explore what we can do together. That's our main request. Thank you.
Thank you, Floyd. Questions? None? Thank you, Lloyd, for your submissions.
We'll see you at the Energy Centre sometime.
Sure you will.
All right, thank you.
Joe Kingy. This is in the right, not to be heard folder, page 2071. Welcome, Joe.
Oh, thank you.
Now you're representing SDHB.
I am from Tuakota. I'm Joe Kingy and I am representing the Southern District Health Board this afternoon. Southern District Health Board would like to thank the Council for hearing our submission this afternoon, and I'm not sure why there was a confusion about us not being heard today. The DHB would like to commend the Council for progress on the Council's smoke-free policy, and as our recommendations and our submission said, to continue to develop and promote smoke-free policy. Southern DHB also considers that option A for the Portobello Road and Harrington Point Road improvements is appropriate, and because this prioritises the work in Broad Bay and Portobello Village settlements and begins work in Vauxhall and Glenfell 1 year earlier than the current plan. The Southern DHB also appreciates the ongoing liaison and conversation with the DCC staff about fluoridation of Dunedin's water supply. Fluoridating water supply is an evidence-based approach to protecting oral health, therefore the whole water of Dunedin's population. So we recommend that's continued. The DHB also supports the Warm Dunedin targeted rate program pilot be fully adopted. And, so that's all we had to actually say today. Thank you.
Happy for some questions?
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
Questions, councillors? Now, I just caution that given that we were mistakenly involved the belief that it was a not to be heard folder, some people may not have caught up with your written submission yet, because we obviously concentrate on reading the ones we're going to hear first. So it may be that Councillor McTavish.
Well, I've just got one question, and it is around the food and resilience. In the work that we did with Community Resilience Forum, we found so many interactions with health on that issue, and I'm just wondering whether or not you guys would have any interest, if indeed we do confirm funding for that project, in working in with any synergies that you guys have in your own programs in that regard.
No, absolutely, Ginger, thank you. yeah, that was one of our recommendations, was that additional resources budgeted to allow for a full-time FTE for a staff member to progress the food resilience kaupapa. And yeah, Public Health South and the DHB would be more than happy to work with any work on that.
Thank you. Councillor Banks.
We've seen over the last few years a lot of improvements in health issues as a result of the smoke-free policy, and you'll have a lot of statistics on that. Do you foresee a situation where we may get similar health improvements with an alcohol reduction or alcohol curtailment policy?
I would imagine so. We have two people at Public Health who work avidly, and we have our Medical Officer of Health here this afternoon who they work with the council with alcohol control. So I would like to think that that could happen similarly with the smoke-free policy stuff, yes.
The smoking has obviously been a very big drag on the on the resources of Southern Health Board. Do you think that excess alcohol abuse is of a similar scale in terms of the cost to the health boards?
I'm not sure of the actual figures, but I could definitely find that information and forward it to the council as soon as possible.
Right. It's just that we're looking at now having to control, each city council is having to do its own sort of hours and all that kind of thing. It would be interesting to know from your point of view how big an issue you thought it was health-wise.
Okay, well, I could get the experts to forward that information next week.
I'm sure in the development of our local alcohol policy that we will want to interact with SDHB, get the input and the expertise. Thank you. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you. One of the submissions that we've heard earlier on in the week was for the creation and funding of a citywide queer support coordinator. And given the high incidence of suicidality and mental health issues in the particularly young LGBT community, I wonder whether the DHB would be interested in being a partner in that work as it evolves.
Yes, at Public Health we have a sexual health promoter, and he works in synergies with other areas. I'm sure he would be interested in having those conversations.
I believe he is in the conversation. I think I was looking for more of a more interest in whether you'd be a financial partner in that kind of work. You don't have to make a commitment now, I understand.
No, I'm not meant to do that, but we could definitely continue and look at that, I'm sure.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Thank you very much. Okay, have a good weekend.
Jeanette Lee. Dunedin Art Gallery Society. Welcome, Jeanette.
Thank you for the chance to speak. And I'm Jeanette Lee, and I'm current president of the Dunedin Public Art Gallery Society. Now, what I'm going to do is very brief, and I'm just going to touch on some of the points that I've made in my written submission, and I will bring up one point that I haven't made in my written submission, and then I'll ask you for some money. Starting off, you may be aware that in 1989, the Dunedin City Council was kind enough to take over some of the responsibilities of running the Dunedin Public Art Gallery. Therefore, the responsibilities of the Art Gallery Society were refined a bit as a result. and they can be identified as 3 issues: to acquire works of art, to support and promote the activities of the DPAG, and also to foster interest in the visual arts in the community. And I'm here as an advocate for the Dunedin Public Art Gallery. And I want to begin just by thanking you, the Council, for your interest and support of the gallery by way of, for example, considering the issue of imposing a charge for entry to the gallery. You decided against it, and we're grateful for that because we think that was the right decision to make. We thank you for the support you give of the gallery by way of looking after the buildings and the staff salaries. That's a lot of kind of invisible expenditure, but it's quite a lot. We appreciate that as well. And I have to say that I appreciate the work of the director and his staff to complement what you do for the gallery. Now, one of the point I didn't make in my written submission relates to capital expenditure, which I see on page 165 of the draft document. This relates to a grant of $200,000, which is to go to the gallery, or is proposed to go to the gallery, for upgraded visitor facilities. And I would support that most warmly and endorse it, because I think it will go a long way to complementing the very positive work that the current director and his staff are undertaking. At the moment, the entrance to the gallery and what we would call visitor facilities look a bit like a cathedral in a jumble, I feel. So I think the director and his staff would make very good use of that $200,000. So please don't take it away from him. It'll be money well spent. The final point I want to make does relate to money, and I feel a bit like Oliver Twist because I think this request gets made every year. It is in relation to the grants that are given with respect to the purchase of new works. There is an amount of $50,000 which is made available by the DCC, which goes towards acquisitions, and that amount has been made, and thank you very much for it, over quite a few years now. Unfortunately, the value or the price of acquiring works of art has not stayed static while the grant has. So while the Dunedin Public Art Gallery Society does its best to generate funds, we do look to the help that you give us. We appreciate it. But if you've got any to spare, we would appreciate if you could look at my suggestion of increasing incrementally over the next, let's say, 10 years, that amount to enable new and significant works to be purchased for the gallery, to keep it as a really lively institution, which it clearly is at the moment. You just need to go across and see the kids in the activities room, or at the moment, if you've got time to spare, go and build a Lego castle. But the gallery is not a playground. It's a very serious place, and I believe, and I'm sure you would agree with me, that it justifies its place in the centre of this city. It's very important to this city. And from that point of view, we really appreciate the presence of 3 of you councillors on our council. And we appreciate your presence and your advice. And we appreciate the interest shown by the whole of the council. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions, Councillor Cup?
I should probably know the answer to this, but do you ever sell works?
No. You, meaning the society? Or the gallery? You see, I'm here as the society.
Meaning whoever was going to buy, to be contributed to the funds for increasing new works. I understand works get more expensive and things. I just wondered whether any of them also become surplus to requirements.
I think I would be safe in saying that's not part of the policy of the gallery, but they look very carefully at acquiring and disposing, but I don't think the disposing would result in funds that would make it worthwhile.
Councillor Banks.
In the past, probably quite distant past now, there were some very significant gifts to the art gallery of artworks. Are you still getting those these days, or is that something that happens less these days?
It does happen. Obviously the gallery really started off based on significant works from many significant people. The volume of that has decreased. I believe part of the role of the society, in fact, is to make people aware of the gallery, to feel good about it, to understand the importance of it within the community, and thereby hope that they would consider, if they had significant works of art, to gift them to the gallery. There is a system where an arrangement can be entered into where works are made available to the gallery on loan, and that opens up the possibility of the general public seeing considerable works of art, and also helping the owners perhaps house them as well. Some of those issues I'm not qualified really to discuss in any detail.
Right, but you wouldn't, for instance, know of any major bequests in the last 10 years to the art gallery?
Yes, there have been. There has been one relating to the very big holdings of Japanese works that are there. And that's been made within the last 10 years.
Thank you. Cheers.
Any further questions? Jeanette, thank you. Warren Boyd.
Dave, could you advise us where we are in our...
Yes, we're down. This is yes, the name's changed. This is the 4:30 submission. There was Heather Marion Smith. Warren is standing in for. So that's page 973. Sorry, just changed it online. Maybe not another three. Welcome, Warren.
Thank you.
The next 10 minutes are yours.
I won't need that long. I'd like to say on behalf of Heather Marion Smith and the Democrats for Social Credit, who I represent, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak. It's late in the day, so I will be brief. With the extra burden of ongoing funding required for the stadium, for instance, we would like to suggest that significant savings of interest could be achieved as other funding sources are legally available, and I would strongly simply urge this council to pursue such options if indeed you are serious about reducing rate increases and sourcing sufficient funding for meeting budgets. Also, speaking as a ratepayer, I would be interested to learn why exactly such alternatives have not yet been explored, where most of this council has been previously alerted to the possibility, as I did last year. Thank you.
Questions, Councillor? Questions?
Seems very clear.
Thank you, Warren. Thank you. Thanks for your submission. Jim Collins. Alhambra Union Rugby Football Club. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks very much. This is Gary Wheeler.
Gary?
Gary's been involved in the club for a long time, so I thought he might be able to answer any other questions. Probably just to give you an overview of our submission. We amalgamated the club, the Alhambra Club with the Union Club in 1987. In those days we had two separate club rooms. We developed one up in Opaho. In those days we used to have 11 teams playing at the club. We spent $375,000 building a new facility up there. It contains 8 changing rooms, plus a separate facility which can be completely detached from the changing rooms. Our situation has changed quite a bit since those days. We have our debt down to $24,000. Unfortunately, we've basically hit a stalemate there. We have a situation in our main club rooms down the North Road, down the Northern Oaks, I'm sorry, where we have to spend 40,000 on a new roof. We think we can probably raise that, but coupled with our mortgage on the facilities up in Opaho, we have a major problem. The facilities, we've allowed them to be used by various other groups at no cost to anybody, except probably to ourselves. Our human resources now have also dwindled quite a bit over the years. It's really no longer viable for us to do that. We have had an arrangement with the bank where we were only paying interest only. The bank have changed that, and we are now having to pay principal as well. The property itself is probably around 300 odd square metres. It cost us $375,000 to develop it. I think it could be a valuable asset to the city. Obviously, the trade-off is the $24,000 for the club rooms.
Have I got a deal for you? That's right. Okay, thank you for that. Very succinct. And we've got questions, councillors. Councillor Lord.
Sorry, look, I haven't got round to reading the submission. So this is the building on a Council Lane sports field, is that right?
Yes, it's on reserve land, so it doesn't allow us to sell it or etc. I should also say that over the last 2 years we've made approaches to the university, to various other sporting organisations to see if there was some way we could come to a meeting of the minds. We've also over the years met with various council people to see if they could assist us, and we haven't had any luck, and our situation has become somewhat more dire because we have a major problem with our roof that we're going to have to address as well. So.
Yep. And is it, do you still want to use these facilities?
Yes, we would like to still use the facilities, yeah.
On some sort of hire, presumably?
Yeah, well, I mean, absolutely. It's something we can probably cash flow our way through for those of you who probably remember when the old North ground was being used for training and what have you, it used to be nothing but a mud bath. We've taken the facility, we only use Opaho for the training, so as a consequence, the North ground always looks in pretty good condition now, I think you'll all agree, and we would like to continue using Opaho because we don't want it to be to the detriment of the North ground.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you for that, and it'd be a pity to see it disappear in any way. Do the other people who use it make any contribution at all? And when you're using it, who's currently paying the electricity and things? There are quite big lights and stuff up there.
To be frank with you, it's something we're probably been a bit remiss on. Like the Otago Rugby League have used it, the Logan Park High School uses it, the university uses it. And in fact, if you go onto the DCC website, the contact point to use the club is our club captain. But we've never charged anything. And as a consequence, we have had a certain amount of wear and tear and cost, which, to be frank with you, we can't really continue doing that. I suppose if we strike a brick wall, we're really going to have to say, listen, I'm sorry, but we can't afford to allow you to use it because of the cost. I mean, Gary got called out just recently, you know, the old story, the toilet's blocked, you've got to go up at 9 o'clock at night and try and sort things out. So our resources are really stretched as it is, just trying to keep the club together.
So you pay the electricity and things at the moment?
Yes, we do.
Do you have any idea what that sort of cost is?
Insurance and electricity is probably somewhere around $10,000.
Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you. Yeah, that was essentially my question too, what the total annual cost of maintenance and outgoings were. Should we take over that responsibility of paying it?
We're at the moment, we allow around $6,000 a year. But to be frank with you, we've only worked on the inside, we've probably neglected the outside of it. So
is it 6,000 or 10,000?
No, I'm sorry, you're talking about the power separately too.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. So the maintenance of the buildings and the outgoings of the building is $6,000 a year.
To be honest with you, I can't give you a definitive number because we amalgamate both of them, and with the 2 club rooms, so I haven't got a readout of what we would spend per year.
Is it possible to get some kind of figures around that? So
there's no problem with that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Bazette.
Jim, is the ground still used for cricket in the summer period?
For
cricket?
Yes, it is.
It used to be. Like so, the Target Cricket Association still use it as a ground.
It gets used every weekend for cricket, and we open it up, and really it's the only toilet facilities up there. So if we don't open it up, there's especially with cricket because it goes for such a long time. But.
So in essence, you're providing a facility for a lot of other organisations that use it on a regular basis.
Yeah.
If I could speak, just Gary Wheeler, Chairman of the Land Union Club. It's mainly myself or the club captain, Hugh Tate, does get the phone call. You know, if the ground's being used, we send them through the council first, but then it comes back to us to could we use the pads and the Gold Coast flags and open up the club room. So we have done that in the past to, a lot of the colleges and as I said, block toilets, both the windows. It's been going on for a number of years now, so that's the land we've got.
Councillor Peake.
Thank you, Jim and Gary, for maintaining the community facility there for so long. I just wondered if you had a feel for whether those groups, and there are numbers of them, aren't there, would be okay about paying for their use of the room, the club rooms.
Well, we've tried in the past, to get a donation or whatever, but again, probably our not taking it further, but they've never sort of been forthcoming. Promises have been there, but never really received anything. We haven't pushed that hard, like I said, because you've been doing it for so long, and we think we're doing a service, and that's what we do: get in the car and go and open it up, and then close it up when they're finished with it. But it is the aftermath of the clean up, and just the wear and tear.
Just to be a bit more direct, would your club be prepared to pay for the use of them?
Yeah. In all fairness, I've been schools, the university. They tend to be short notice that we tend to people want to use it. But you are right. I mean, we should have actually taken a much firmer line on it. But to be frank, probably like most sporting, the rugby league use it, what have you. Everybody's speckling for their dollar, aren't they?
Logan Park High School's got their own key. So
yeah, they actually come up.
Yes, sorry, just one more question. Gary, I guess the ground will be maintained by the council anyway, won't they? They will prepare the wickets and they keep the grass cut.
It's an artificial wicket, but they do cut the grass and mark the fields, yep.
Yeah, okay, right, thank you.
No more questions?
Well, just I guess briefly, have you had any discussions with staff about this, or is this your first approach to council?
No, our first approach was probably about 2.5 years ago, where we met with Ethel Soper. We've also met with Mr. Clark. We've actually thought we had an agreement possibly coming up, but there was something got caught in the middle. Unfortunately, we couldn't get over that. At that stage, we were still managing things. It's now a lot less manageable. Let's put it that way.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take it into consideration.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Thank you very much.
Now, I have an apology to make. I've missed someone. Alison Devlin. Alison. Well, we're pretty sure you're not Alison, but
no,
my apologies for that.
No, it's been most interesting to all your various issues. I'm actually Alison Devlin's my planner, but she can't come along today, so she sent me to represent Targo Business Park and the Nichols Group on behalf of myself and my brother, who run some companies in Dunedin, some businesses, a variety of businesses, and also are pretty keen on undertaking a wide variety of development around the city. We've mainly been working in terms of development in Central Otago over the last 20 years, but we're pretty keen on Dunedin right now, so we're doing some residential development in Mosgiel in a subdivision called Heathfield, Otago Business Park on Dukes Road, and we're redeveloping a number of brownfield sites around the city, and we're trying to attract some new businesses to town. We're on a bit of an initiative to create some employment around the place. We've been doing that for a long time within our own businesses, but we're pretty keen to start ramping up some job creation external to our own businesses, and it's working pretty well. We're on the red carpet scheme, not red tape, and I must compliment Council for having such a scheme. It's a pleasure to do development in Dunedin. The perception is that it isn't, and it's hard, but I'll tell you what, compared to where we mainly do development, which is the Queenstown Lake District Council, it's a walk in the park here, and I had a meeting on Monday with Mrs Van Newden, who's the Mayor of Queenstown, and explained the difference in attitude towards development between the two regions, and they couldn't be more different. So Queenstown, a very, very difficult place to do development. Dunedin, very welcoming, and we have some very good and positive discussions with your economic development people. So that's all pretty heartening. What I want to talk to you today is about development contributions, and to draw some comparisons again between Queenstown, which we're very familiar with, and what might happen in Dunedin. So you've got to understand that we haven't had development contributions to any large extent in Dunedin in the past, but Council is proposing them in terms of residential contributions and business contributions. And it's something that we support, which is, you know, probably surprising for a developer to say that, but we understand that they're necessary and they're to cover the added cost of adding infrastructure to a town or a city. And to that end, we're supportive of that concept in general, but they have to be imposed with great care, or you will get the opposite result of what you want to get. The quantum is important, and in terms of, I'll talk about residential first. In terms of residential quantum, the Council is proposing a development contribution of $5,300 per residential lot, which sounds perfectly fine to me. The problem with it is that it's a bit like GST. You remember when it came in at 10%, and it's 15% now, and we've been developing in the last 10 years an affordable housing scheme in Lake Hawea, where the development contribution started at $6,000 a section, and we very successfully developed quite a few sections, upwards of 100 sections for first home buyers and families. Those contributions now, unfortunately, are over $20,000 per section. We haven't developed any new sections there for the last 5 years. And the councillors, I told this to the councillors that were present in this meeting on Monday, and they're absolutely aghast by it. They're very unhappy with it, but there's nothing they can do about it. And it's a bind they're in, and it's leading to the opposite effect, because now we're, you know, it's a per lot development. Now we're, instead of building an affordable section which might be $100,000, we are building a lifestyle block which might be $200,000, same charge. So it's the only viable development that we have. So it's caused the opposite to happen. It's also caused the rating base to never increase, because we'd increased the rating base, we'd increased council's revenue through rates. It's caused us not to build any infrastructure, because remember, developers build the infrastructure. They build the roads, they build the footpaths, they build all the underground infrastructure, and they vest it at council at no charge. So one particular contribution we have a great problem paying is transport, because in terms of greenfield development, we are building roads. We can't do both. We can't pay transport contributions and build roads. So that's where it is for residential. $5,300 seems reasonable, but you have to have a great deal of care that these things don't balloon out of control. For commercial, development contributions for commercial and business, industrial, commercial, business, whatever you like. Development contributions in Dunedin, on the other hand, will be an absolute disaster. And I urge council to be very cautious, because really what they are is a tax on business and a tax on new jobs. And we are in a situation, again, if we compare it to QLDC, of commercial development contributions being so high there that there's simply a whole lot of businesses not turning up. And the reason that Cromwell has grown so fast and has so much industrial development is their development contribution policy is far more reasonable. And it's the transport contributions for commercial enterprises up there that are killing the development. I would advocate that it is far better to have no tax on businesses, no development on new businesses coming to our town. It's jobs we need, it's a growing city we need. And I've heard, it's been quite interesting to the city for about an hour and a half listening to a variety of people. I heard the guy from the family violence thing. You know, a lot of those sort of issues go away if we've got jobs and a growing economy. So it was pretty interesting. So I'd just like to conclude that we are very keen to keep attracting new businesses. I have several projects under construction at the moment. We've got buildings going up all over the place. I know that if you had a development contribution policy that taxed those businesses, I wouldn't have been able to get them over the line. I'm only just getting them over the line, building a property, getting the rental to work, getting the occupancy costs, getting these businesses to come to town. So it's quite an important issue to have a look at. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. Can I just kick off? A short while ago, you had a bit of an issue with timing and stuff and resource consent, and we put in place, I think it was put in place a liaison person. Was that helpful? I'm interested in feedback on that.
We've
caught that a bit more.
Because we've started to do a lot of construction and we want to continue to do it for 5. We think the timing's right. We think the economy is starting to kick in, and we decided a year ago to start ramping up, particularly in the city here, building new buildings. And but we just couldn't believe the building consent process. And as you know, because I've talked to you about it personally, and there was an article from in the paper, I don't know whether you read it this week, I think about Wednesday, where I think Laurie Mains and a few of the other builders were talking about the issues. Well, they're the same issues I was talking about. They were spot on. And it is something that's of great concern, is that the building consents get put on hold and they wait to the last possible moment and they request further information. And that's the problem we were having. We now are sitting down with council. I was in here yesterday with Margot and the planners and telling them what we've got coming up and sort of paving the way for a more smooth process. So it couldn't be working better. And it really makes you feel this red carpet thing, we hate red tape, as developers we hate red tape. This red carpet thing really makes you feel welcome, and it actually makes us want to do more projects. And this is what I told Vanessa. I said, we don't want to do it, we don't want to do stuff out here, we want to do it in Dunedin. She hates hearing that. You know, she hasn't heard that before, but it's interesting. But this is a perception thing. Like my brother, and Hillary will know this, my brother's he thinks it's really hard to do development in Dunedin. He hasn't got much patience, so he lets me handle that side of the business. But the perception is that it's hard to get consents here, and it's frustrating. And it has been worked with the building control. But the thing is, if you put up a sound proposal, you'll always get a consent in Dunedin. I've never had a consent turned down, and I'd like to think that was because we've put up pretty sound proposals to do stuff. So if they're strange proposals, you know, there will be a no, but if there's some good stuff happening, it'll generally be a yes, and it's a productive place to do business.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Alan. You touched on developers coming in and paying already for footpaths and everything to be developed. We've had inordinate numbers of submissions about people wanting footpaths who've never paid for them, but yet want everyone else to pay for them themselves. And it's really interesting because we put through, we require you not only to contribute by development contribution potentially, I bet you agree with the level we're setting, but also you have to put in as a developer those things which aren't provided in other sections. And if we go ahead, if that subdivision went ahead, they would be paying not only by buying the land for that footpath, they then have to be rated for everyone else's footpaths and all the resources that it's an interesting position.
Footpaths is a really good one, and it's a great example. And when we build greenfield developments, different from infill development. So greenfield developments like Heathfield we're doing, Meadowstone and Wanaka, and we're building every part of the infrastructure at our own cost. And we vested it in council's ownership at no cost for council to start. So it's a pretty good sort of model really from both sides. But what happens in Wanaka now, and why it's getting more difficult up there, is not only do I have to build my own footpaths and things, there's a transport contribution that's placed on all the, per lot. And that transport contribution is designed to go to the Broad Bay we heard about before, or go to some of the older streets in Wanaka and put a curb and channel down it, because it wasn't done at that time because development standards were a lot lower. And we just say to council, we can't do both. We can do one or the other. We can't fund both. So it's a very interesting one. So it's that's where we stand. Happy to build Rolls-Royce streets to a very high engineering standard, but we can't go and upgrade old streets.
Councillor McCann.
Well, just a couple of questions. Thank you for your submission. The first one is, one part of the new proposal is that we've kept the potentially applicable fee in each activity area and each area of benefit to $5,000. So I'm struggling to understand how or where this concern about rising costs is coming from.
Talking about residentially.
Yes.
$5,300 I think is pretty good. It's an interesting one. Sections in Dunedin are very affordable in New Zealand terms, and so the stages we've done in Heathfield, the average price was about 110,000 to 120,000 plus GST, and $5,000 works. But in the Hawea situation, same sort of average price, but $20,000 development contribution plus building it doesn't work, doesn't happen. So my only concern is that once the policy is in place, and that's what we found in Hawea, we went there on a $6,000 development contribution, now 20. That's the concern.
Did they have caps in each area of benefit? Because I think that's a different, or unless the contribution policy did have caps and still managed to get to that point, then I can see that there'd be concern. But given that we have caps in specific areas, I'm not sure that it's necessarily.
Yes, the more development that goes on, the less contribution there are, because there's more sections to spread it over. So in the global financial crisis, obviously the retraction of the number of properties being built, so you kind of chase your tail a wee bit. So that it almost causes the opposite. That's when you'd want more development, it causes the opposite effect. And that's what development contributions will do. So if you get them at a level, and even where they're too high, simply there'll be no more sections being made, which means that you are not increasing the amount of new housing stock or more modern housing stock, which any city has got to be concerned about. So hopefully that explains it.
The second question I have is sort of related, and that is, you do understand that we could at any time decide to review this development contributions policy if the feedback that we were getting from the community was such that we were concerned about the viability of developments under that. So I'm not sure what's happening
our experience is that councils have used it they've looked at it as a way of, and sometimes it's not supposed to be, but an income generator, and it's always gone up. We've never known them to go down, and when they get to a point where nothing happens, they wonder why.
And then perhaps related to this as well is and my final question, Your Worship, is are you guys aware that we aren't going to be rating or developing our budgets in the expectation of development contributions coming in? We'll be taking those and applying them the year after they arrive. So we won't be building budgets on the assumption of revenue, which means that we shouldn't get locked into a situation where we are relying on DC revenue when it, and therefore set in concrete a policy. Does that give you some?
Look, I have no confidence given the other experiences of the council. Once it's policies, it's like any sort of tax, and GST is a good example. Once the policy gets in there, it's very easy for any future council to manipulate, and it tends to be what's happened.
Councillor Thompson.
Well, I suspect that I can't elicit any more confidence out of you with my question either, but but you chip away at these things. Does it give you any more confidence that we started off at a figure about 3 to 4 times that amount, and not only brought it down to about, well, I don't know, was it a quarter roughly or something, but and capped it? Well, there was some of that as well, but it wasn't all that.
I think what the development community perceive, and there are a lot of developers that will just say no, they don't want it. We're not saying that. We say we see the need for it. I think the thing was, if it was 3 or 4 times, I don't know, if it was $20,000, it would immediately put a brake on everything we're doing. So we've probably got 50 or 60 sections under construction at the moment. It would immediately put brakes on that happening, and the adverse reaction in Dunedin City would be somewhat. Well, you know about it, because, see, what we do is we unlock a whole lot of things to happen. We unlock a whole lot of builders, sub-trades. All this stuff creates a huge amount of employment, not just building a subdivision. And so so the perception is, look, we'll bring it back to where the developers can't really complain, but which is fair enough. But we're just a little bit worried about what would happen in the future. But that's something that we can obviously make submissions on in the future, but we've been very unsuccessful with a couple of other councils once this policy's come in.
Councillor Paul.
I was just going to make one comment, that often those development contributions that you're talking about, like for example transport and that, you should, well, I'm sure you are aware, but it's not just necessarily the roads. You can build Rolls-Royce highways in development, but it may be that you put enough of those developments, and it is about having to upgrade the mainstream road back into town or whatever, which may not have been required if your developments hadn't been there now. I don't want to get into an argument about it, but that is partly why, and it's the same with infrastructure pipes.
Yes, and in very fast-growing towns, that is an issue. So what we've said in our submission, in our written submission, is that Dunedin is growing at such a slow and steady pace, or not to be negative, but it's not development that's going to trigger a huge amount of existing road upgrades. Often it's more safety and those sorts of things. It's not added, it's not me being able to bring so many new businesses to town that suddenly these roads need upgrading because of that. And that's the more important part of our submission, is it's this, what really worries me is having a tax on business, because that's about the jobs, and that's, I mean, the residential part's one part, and it's probably what you're more familiar with, but we have not had any impediments to new businesses establishing in Dunedin City in the past, and if that was to be introduced, I think the amount of money that you would raise from the development contribution would be substantially less than the benefits of the increased rating base and the new jobs that are developed. And I sincerely believe that.
Councillor White.
I applaud this development. So far, I'm looking on your website right now, you've got 4 sold and 4 under contract.
Whereabouts?
At the out of Otago Business Park.
Sorry, no, all sold, yeah.
All sold?
Yeah, we're just thinking of a stage, a big new stage to create some more. And we'll have to update that website.
Okay.
Yeah, you're onto it.
How many jobs are those businesses going to bring to town?
Well, it's an interesting one. There's a variety of businesses out there, from the regional council's gone out there, which was good. And it's taken us an awful lot of time and a lot of heartache, and we've had to really incentivise businesses to go there, and we've been selling land for, as you'll see there, about $80 a square metre, and nationally industrial land sells for about $250 a square metre, so not making any money. But you know, we've got a sheet metal business and a pretty high-tech electrical switchboard business going there, and we've got a what do you call it when you get cremated? So you know, I mean, it's a pretty good variety. But we just lately had some pretty exciting initiatives. Now out there, we're kind of a bit future-proof from the business thing, because we get charged a development contribution. You've got to remember that some parts are more difficult. That Mosgiel East residential is about $11,000 a section, and the business park out there is $4.51 per square metre of land we develop, which means over the whole of that business park, which is 12 hectares, our development contributions are going to be $45,000. They work really well. You know, we just pay it and it works. We're doing a development in Teviot Street at the moment, and we applied the council's proposed development contribution upon that single development, and it was the new contribution that you're proposing, and it's $50,000 for the single development. And that would, and if we did a bit of a scenario, because we only just got this thing to work, we thought, well, if we had to write out a cheque to council for $50,000, would the development have proceeded? And the answer would have been no. And council, of course, wouldn't have had the $50,000, but you know, if the development hadn't come, there's quite a few jobs in that one. So, and the multi-million-dollar building, bigger, you know, next year I'll be paying more rates from day dot. So this is the conundrum. It's actually a real conundrum, and that's why we've got to look at it really carefully.
I guess the other advantage for the DCC is they own the land next door, so obviously that value's gone up too.
No, we couldn't get the council to, we wanted to do a joint private-public partnership, but council have sold the land next door now, unfortunately.
Okay.
We did try it though.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you very much.
Good. And I apologise again for...
Oh, that's all right. I've got to go down and get in the rally car and start on the rally.
Good luck. Councillor, I need to now go to this other function, so I'll hand over to Councillor Benson Pope. So we're... Are you putting your own office?
Thank you, everyone. I remain concerned about the quorum, so I would urge your restraint around questions, because we do have other people who have already given notice and they have to leave.
And next person is Adrian Mulqueen. Adrian Mulqueen.
Welcome, this is 980. And Adrian, welcome. Thank you for your submission, and you have 5 minutes.
And do I have
Sorry?
So what did you say?
You have 5 minutes.
Oh, 5 minutes. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk. I've come to talk about, you know, the Portobello widening of the road. And I must say, I was reading the submissions and reading the, you know, in the paper. I was a wee bit daunted about coming because there's lots of new ideas coming up. But I also would like to thank the council for actually building this asset, because obviously, you know, it enhances everybody's life, and obviously it's really popular because everybody wants it in front of their place. And everybody's got compelling reasons for wanting this done first. The original motivation for the project was safety, to improve the safety of the road. And so for me personally, the bottom line is to fix the most dangerous section first, and that's the Vauxhall end. It's extremely narrow, there's no shoulder, there's lots of cars and they travel fast. You know, when I'm cycling along there, when you come off the lane and go into that little narrow bit of road, it's really scary. And in fact, sometimes it's even scary when you're in a car, let alone when you're on a bike. So for me, you know, that's the most dangerous part of the road. The issues that have been in the paper recently about the school children, you know, I feel really reluctant to enter into that debate. And it was unexpected to me because, you know, I think that the majority of children can actually walk to school in both those communities on the footpath, on the other side, on the landline side of the road. Like if I was a parent, I wouldn't want my child crossing over to this footpath, walking along and then crossing the road again to the school. So I wouldn't have seen it as a way for the school children to get to school. I see it more as recreation and, you know, after school activities. And so I was wondering, you know, thinking that if you were going to do the most dangerous part of the road, which is the boxing, then maybe something could be done, you know, pretty soon about the issues that the parents have for their children walking to school. I know that in Portobello there's an area between Beaconsfield Road and Highcliffe Road that there's no footpath on that side of the road. I'm not really aware in Broad Bay, except for this, you know, there are a few people who live on the other side, but most live on the sort of school side of that road. So maybe something could be done in the interim to actually improve the footpaths.
You're not the first person to suggest that. Someone also did earlier. It's obviously something we're going to look at.
Yeah, good. Okay. I guess the other thing is I think, you know, it has to be a real commitment from locals, you know, to lower the speeds within those residential areas. And maybe more signage. There's not a lot of signage warning there's children crossing or there's children around or cyclists. And then my second point is kind of, you know, what actually is being built, and sort of really requesting that a lot of thought be put into the design of the shared path, and that there be a consistent and very high standard. I live about 1.5 miles, 2.2 kilometres beyond Portobello, and that bit is actually considered done. Actually, as I was coming into town today, I saw the marking truck going out, so I was just wondering what was going to happen, because up until recently it's been shockingly marked. There was no consistency, like sometimes the path was down to 0.5 metre, 0.5 metre, sometimes it went to 1 metre, sometimes it was 1.5 metres. So it's very inconsistent. So wherever they came to a pinch point, which is usually around the corner, it just disappeared. So it wasn't really very safe. And I know that there's a family that often, with 2 small children, sometimes a toddler as well, who actually walk that bit quite regularly. And I just feel that, you know, there'll be more people doing it in the future. And so it's really important to spend the money now and do a really good job. You know, when you read up about best practice for shared paths, because I guess these are shared paths, you know, they're for walkers, you know, they're very young and they're very old, for maybe skateboarders, for cyclists, for people in wheelchairs. But the very minimum should be 2 metres, and the average width of the path around McAndrew Bay is 2.2. So it's the very minimum. So that, you know, if you have a parent with a pram and a toddler, you know, there's not much room for anybody else. And to make it work, you know, you need to have for 2 people coming in opposing directions to actually pass. So maybe that could be looked at in the future to make sure that, you know, I know that when we did talk about it, it was, you know, to do with money and making it wider, but you know, if this is going to last for many years and you want it to be well used, it must probably be worth spending that money on and making it wide enough so that people can use it. And also maybe some signage, because I mean I ride a bike on that, and sometimes the pedestrians cross because they don't realise that it's actually a shared path and that, you know, they are going to meet cyclists on it. And then it comes to sort of, oh, that's right, so the minimum's 2, but the maximum is 4 metres. I'm sorry, I should have brought you a nice graphic. I didn't realise I put a nice graphic up, but So where you've got the residential areas where you're going to have multi-use, it really should be 4 metres and, 3.5 to 4 metres. So that's almost double what it is. And then I'd just like to address the hazards. Still got some time?
Finish off.
Okay, the hazards, rubbish bins on the Macandra Bay. You've got rubbish bins right where you've got this 2.2 metres and you've got a rubbish bin that takes up some of that. That's a hazard. It might be good to look at the best practice for for the edge protection. You have those little low curbs, so they're quite dangerous. So maybe you need railings or something higher if you're going to have them, because they can be really dangerous. And also the grates, like the road between Portobello and Lower Portobello is really new, but the grate covers are in the wrong direction. So, that's dangerous.
Obviously, this is an issue that people are aware of.
And so I just think that, the design, a lot of time and care needs to go into the design.
Thank you. I think the design issue is really important and will be constantly revisited. Councillor Mazette raised earlier in discussions the design of the original piece of work from the Shore Street corner through to Vauxhall, which is shared, of course, and now substandard in terms of what's being designed elsewhere.
Yeah.
Questions, councillors? Councillor McTavish.
Adrian, will you participate in the detailed design phase that's coming, just turning my statement into a question, which will be coming up after the resource consent goes through?
Well, I could be involved, but I'm not a designer. But
it's because it's a community effort.
Yes, I would be very pleased to be part of that.
Super.
Yeah.
Thank you for that offer.
Okay.
Councillor Wilson.
I'm required to ask this question because I've asked almost every other submitter on cycleways. To push this project forward in order to get a better result for the whole peninsula has been suggested by some. Would you be averse to this project being sped up and being done in 5 or 7 years rather than 10? And to fund that, would you be averse to either rates rise or targeted rates in the area that gets the most benefit from it?
Well, I think that everybody will benefit. I think it's a shame that, unfortunately, when a certain part of the population have to pay for something that everybody's going to use and everybody is stretched. I think I'd be prepared to pay some more rates in general, but I think that should be paid by everybody, not just the people who live on the peninsula, because people from town, the idea is that people from town will cycle out there, and I'm sure they will.
I'm sure they do now. All right. Thank you very much, and thank you for the offer to be involved in the ongoing discussion. Appreciate you taking the trouble. Thank you. Now, Murray Grimwood, I don't see, but I do see Heather. Is Murray Grimwood here? No. Then we can go on, please, to 988, Rachel Gibb. Come up, Rachel. Thank you, Rachel. Welcome. You heard the ground rules. Up to 5 minutes, and then questions if you're happy about that.
Very good.
The floor is yours.
I do.
Have you got something to give people?
I do have an extra sheet of paper to hand out.
Would be good. Someone will grab those.
So that, because I'm going to be hitting people with a little mental arithmetic, so I thought it might be easier to have the numbers.
Would you mind pulling that microphone a bit closer to yourself so we can all clearly hear clearly? That's fine. Thank you.
Is that okay?
Great.
Yes, okay. Well, thank you for hearing my submission and reading what I've had there. I am submitting against fluoridation. Now, 30 years ago, if asked about fluoridation, I would have said it can occur naturally, it helps prevent dental caries, does no harm, why not? What blissful ignorance. During the 1990s, I was involved in the Environment Court hearings for Ravensdown's permits to discharge airborne pollutants, one of which was fluoride. I learnt about its effect on
on vegetation, on glass, pollinating insects, how it accumulates in the food chain, how it combines readily with calcium, and so on. I ploughed through papers in the science library, presented evidence, listened to and cross-examined various experts. It became personal when I was diagnosed with precancerous nodules on my thyroid. After the surgeon had pulled the stitches from my throat, I asked him, "Is there any chance that these pollutants could contribute to the growth of these nodules?" "Yes," he said, "the thyroid is a very sensitive organ and can be affected by minute quantities of such elements." So off I went to the med school library in search of books on fluoride and the thyroid, and was particularly interested to read early studies by Galletti et al., where fluoride was used as a medication to slow down an overactive thyroid. During the following 10 years, as I sat on the community liaison group for Ravensdown, we commissioned reports on the health effects of fluoride and learnt about the levels found in a range of common foods. It became clear that we ingest far more via the water supply than from Ravensdown's emissions, and significantly that the total fluoride that we ingest via food and water can easily overlap with the doses used in Galletti's studies, especially when the recipient also had reduced levels of iodine. Now, the major work done by the National Research Council in the United States confirmed my findings, and they refined the dosage to the more precise and workable form that I refer to in my submission, i.e., if we ingest more than 0.05 milligrams per kilo of body weight per day, there is an increased risk of thyroid damage. Now, yesterday I bought this small jar of fluoride tablets. You're most welcome to have a look at it. And I was interested to read the following on the label, and this is what I've put in front of you. The dosage per day, 3 to 5 years, half a tablet. Now that's for someone approximately 20 kg, and that would be 0.25 milligram per day. For 6 to 8-year-olds, 1 tablet, 9 years and over, 2 tablets, or 1 milligram. It also says use only as directed, do not exceed stated or directed dose. Warning, do not use in areas with more than 3 parts per million of fluoride in the domestic water supply. Do not use in children under 3 years. Do not use during pregnancy. Now, if we compare some of those doses with the National Research Council guidelines and with those that are likely to be consumed when using fluoridated water, we can see under 3 years, this is babies, toddlers, 5 to 20 kilograms, babies. On the jar it says, do not use. The National Research Council guideline says that consuming over 0.25 milligrams for a 5 kilo baby or 1 milligram for a 20 kilo 2-year-old risks damaging the thyroid. But the dose given via our water supply would be 0.75 milligrams up to 1.5 milligrams. That would be if they were consuming 1 to 2 litres, which is normal standard. Yeah?
Oh, no, don't matter, just a question. No,
As
we'll
it
get
comes
to
up.
questions. You'll need to finish up, Rachel. You've used up your time.
Wow. And this is actually 2 to 3 times the guideline, or up to 3 whole tablets. And incidentally, about 200 times the level found in breast milk. Now you can see that this continues on, and the older we get, the more difficult the calculations become because of the wide variations in weight, diet, medical history, etc. However, it should be clear how easy it is to exceed any existing guidelines and how small a safety margin there is for any of us. Surely the wise thing to do would be to do away with this risky, broad brush policy of fluoridation and at least investigate a targeted option, such as subsidising the distribution of xylitol gum to preschoolers, pregnant women and children at low decile schools. Now, I may not be a trained scientist, But with parents who are both Oxford-educated scientists, I am at least familiar with scientific methodology. And over the years, I've discussed these concerns not only with them, but also with other scientists and health professionals, including various emeritus professors, Albert Bergstahler of Kansas University, Paul Connett of St. Lawrence University, who specialised in environmental chemistry, toxicology and risk assessment. These are scientists with impeccable credentials who've studied at top universities like Harvard and Cambridge. They are not idiots, and their assertions should not be dismissed lightly.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. You'll have to stop there because you're out of time. You happy to take questions?
Absolutely.
Councillor Lord.
Yeah.
Can you just repeat the amount that you said you could take a day? On there it says 0.5 of a milligram. You would need to drink 20 litres of
No,
water
hang
a day.
on. Whereabouts are you referring to?
What was the amount you said you'd safely take a day?
0.05 milligrams per kilo of body weight. So a 10 kg toddler, a 1-year-old of 10 kg, should not have more than 0.5 milligrams in total. Now, they're likely, my granddaughter, for example, at 10 kg would easily consume 2 kilos if she was bottle fed with fluoride, with fluoridated water mixed with the formula. It's very easy for her to take 1.5 to 2 litres of water per day.
Yes, I think.
And that comes up to 1.5 milligrams in total.
No, I think you're doing the calculations wrong. The part they're putting in is 0.7 per million. So
Yes.
that's 750 grams per million litres of water.
What's the question?
Well, I was just going to say, if your child drank 20 litres of water, which is absolutely impossible, they would get 0.015.
All right, no, we're having a discussion and it's not part of the process.
Yeah.
Further questions anywhere? Councillor Bannerman.
You're talking about fluoride in the water.
I am.
Do you accept that fluoride as a topical toothpaste, for
Yes.
instance, can have some benefits in reducing dental caries?
I have no particular problem with people using fluoridated toothpaste. Absolutely, it combines with calcium into calcium fluoride. This makes it slightly harder. If we have it inside our bodies as calcium fluoride, making the calcium inside our bodies harder, that is bad. On our teeth, not a problem. If people want to do that, they're welcome.
Okay, so you wouldn't be opposed to people using fluoridated toothpaste, but it's getting fluoride actually into the system.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You said you had some evidence of effects of fluoride coming out of the Ravensdown fertiliser works.
Yes.
On glass.
Yes.
Are you aware that Ravensdown routinely pays
Yes.
for new glazing in the Ravensdown area because it goes milky coloured?
Yes.
And
I am aware of that.
And you're aware that that's also a fluoride effect?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
No further questions. Thank you, Rachel. Lindsay Duck, today, welcome. 990. Good evening, Lindsay. You're representing an organisation, so you have 10 minutes, which I'm sure will be enough time to include questions as well, won't you?
Hopefully. Maybe Mr. Dippy has just solved part of my problem. He suggested that he would pay reserve contribution towards developments in Mosgiel. Maybe that might help with the development of a new swimming pool out there. 2 years ago I presented a submission to the council relating to the lack of economic planning within the council. It was the same day at which I think the launch of the Waterfront Hotel was taking place at the stadium. And many of you people, in fact, were not present because you were at the stadium. However, I would like to congratulate the council on implementing an economic strategy which is in fact helping to develop the city. I think it's great to see it, and it's also great to see the way in which you are reporting it to the members of the public. So not a brickbat, but a bouquet. However, I'm here to also talk on behalf of my submission on behalf of the Dunedin Swim Coaching Board, an organisation that you established under a service level agreement to implement the swimming program at Moana Pool to enable up to 200 athletes to be taught professionally to swim, by professional people to swim, and to look towards KPIs which would have international based athletes coming out of our pool, which I can report we are having. However, there's three things on my submission. One is the request for the removal of lane charges at Moana Pool. Two, that the council review the available lane space at Moana Pool. And three, that the public lane space allocation be reviewed. Maybe to go back to the first one, we assume that there's good reasons why the council put in a lane charge, I think, at your last annual plan. However, I'm not aware of why that was put in or what it was intended to do. What in fact it has done is it has added costs to people's participation in the swimming area, mainly those people that pay to have training done for them. They are now paying twice, or we are looking at paying twice. They pay to enter the pool, and now we are looking at actually paying for the lane space itself. I would like the council to review that policy. Happy to debate it, but at this stage we don't know why it was instituted.
Councillor Wilson will tell you in due course by the look of things. Was somebody going to comment?
First question.
Oh.
And comment about it, yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to deal with
Fine.
Well, my recollection was part because we were getting too much pressure on one particular time or time frames in the day. The question we've asked other people who've talked about discounts for the pool is and maybe we should have done it this way, is should we be, instead of adding cost at certain times which are for high use, instead reducing costs in periods of low use? And would that benefit your swimmers? Would they actually get in at a lower price to use the pool at a certain time when it's not high use?
This probably goes on to my second comment, which is about lane allocation. And the point to respond to, Kate, is that in the mornings, the activity of the lanes, there are in fact a retention by the council to have public lanes available for people who pay as they enter. That appears to be 6 to 8 lanes at any one time. 6 to 8 lanes at any one time. Those lanes have maybe one person in them, and the other lanes where we are training have anything from 4 to 14. The actual cost is at that time. So, in answer to your question, I don't think that would solve the problem. Just to carry on, I think that we're also asking that the council review the policy in relation to lanes available to the public in general. I'm not sure again why this policy is there, but I appreciate that it's very difficult to allocate space to people and quite difficult for all sports involved. However, it appears to be a requirement that you have 6 to 8 lanes available all the time, which has effects of diminishing the opportunities available to people to use the pool for organised swimming or other sports. I think that also means that the staff of the pool have a reduced flexibility when it comes to allocating lanes. Where there is demand, they are required to retain space for the public, means that the staff themselves are under stress and strain when it comes to requests by other parties. So I think it's a policy thing that I'm asking to be reviewed. Just by way of commentary, we have in fact done some analysis on the costs to be a swimmer in our program, and I remember Kate Wilson talking to me about costs associated with her daughter doing sport. This one absolutely shocked me. The actual cost of an A-grade swimmer competing at maybe four events internationally, would cost a parent around $7,000 a year. If that parent had a person in the C squad or 2 children, could be costing $10,000 a year. I'm asking on behalf of the swimmers to not enforce the charge on lanes, which currently costs around $2,000 a month.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Lindsay. Councillor Bazet.
Lindsay, just to help to facilitate your request, would it not be best, I mean there's 2 issues, one is the cost and the other one is the public lane space allowance be reviewed and also the lane space allocation to the DSCB. Would that not be best addressed through the service level agreement?
Yes, but I presume the service level agreement at renewal time, I'm not aware of whether it can be done on an ongoing basis. Haven't read the fine print.
Yeah, there's 2 issues. You said one I think can be addressed through the service level agreement. The other one with regards to the increase in fees or costs, we would consider that next week when we do it. We're looking at the total submissions and what people have addressed.
Yep, take it on advice.
I think that's the way that should be handled. Do you agree with that?
Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
I'm just a little confused. So for clarification, are you saying that you feel that the lane swimmers, your training squad swimmers, are being unfairly disadvantaged in terms of the number of lanes that they have relative to the general public?
I'm saying that if it was managed in a different way, we'd have less people per lane, and yes, our swimmers would be better off, and we have a waiting list.
But I'm trying to understand how it would be, like, what is it you're suggesting would be the different way?
I would suggest that if the staff of the pool were allowed to have greater flexibility on the allocation of lanes.
If it was a quiet night from members of the public, if they could say, well, no problem with you guys using that one and that one.
Correct, but this could be 4:30 a.m. in the morning as well.
Sorry?
This could be 4:30 a.m. in the morning as well. Because at the moment we get 8 lanes, for example, and there are another 8 lanes.
Well, then just following on from that, would there be an incompatibility between saying there is a base lane charge which works on the assumption that generally there is competition for space, but to the extent that that competition doesn't exist at any particular time, you might be able to expand into those other lanes without any additional charge?
100% right.
That would solve the problem.
Definitely.
Councillor Calvert.
I think when I get my head around what you've just said, I think it's answered my question.
Councillor McTavish.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. The $7,000 that you quoted, is that the cost for the 3 elements that you discussed in your submission, that being professional training costs, entry to the pool and actual lanes used?
No, it's the cost of an athlete to be an athlete in our program. So that part of the cost relates to lane costs, coaching costs, travel costs.
And so travel costs are
part of the process.
Part of that. How much of that is travel costs? Do you know?
Yes, I do. Approximately 3,500.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, that's not it. Councillor Wiley.
Sorry. Lindsay, how do other pools around the country deal with a similar issue?
Well, there's all sorts of examples around the country because some are private, some are combined operations with councils, etc. But nobody that I'm aware of charges twice for the athlete to use the lane space. So it's an entry fee or a cost of lane.
All right, thank you, Lindsay. We'll be talking about these issues next week, along with all the others. Thank you. CM Spencer. Sorry, we didn't have a more specific time. And this is co-housing. That's fine.
Thank you for having us.
Are you my mysterious Mr. Spencer?
No. This is
I'm Catherine Spencer.
Catherine?
But we're making groups of...
That's fine. Okay.
My name's Kristen.
That's fine. You can share your time.
Yeah. I'm aware that it's been a long, intense week for you, a long, intense day. We're at the end of it. We want to keep it short and sweet. We know you're probably hypoglycemic.
We were fed about this time last night too. Thank you very much. But rather more healthfully, I'm sad to say. This is great.
I'd like to point out there's no fluoride in any of these.
I'm delighted.
Yeah.
Right, you've got up to 10 minutes and then questions if you're happy about that. So feel free to sit if you prefer, but up to you.
Okay. Now, some of you I know are aware of the concept of urban co-housing that we're working on, and some probably not. So just to point out that we're the group that have bought the former High Street school site and are planning on developing a co-housing community there. Okay. Now, co-housing is a way of living that is committed to environmental and social sustainability. And what we're really excited about is that way of living, but also I think that this really fits in with the underlying philosophy of the Dunedin City Council plan towards a sustainable and resilient city. And we fully support that and believe that we'll fit in well with that. You also have the underlying commitment to building supportive community. And we are also all about building supportive community and supportive, sustainable neighbourhoods within that. So my colleagues Catherine and others are going to talk a little bit more in detail about what that means, but just to say we think right up front that we fit hand in glove with what the City Council is hoping to achieve in the City of Dunedin. So our submission really isn't just about what we hope to be able to do, but what we hope to be able to do with you for the City of Dunedin.
Thank you. Catherine?
I'd like to point out that the submission comes from a group called Co-Housing Ōtepoti Dunedin, and that the group that has bought the former High Street school site is Urban Co-Housing Ōtepoti Limited. So we're a subset of the umbrella group. And we're really excited by the idea of co-housing in Dunedin because we think it is a way of addressing some of the climate change and post-peak oil problems that we're going to face as a community. And we would like the council to be proactive in supporting this new way of living. We believe that we have to change fundamentally the way we live, the way we use our resources, the way we share our resources. And this is one way in which we can actively do that now. There is only one other co-housing group in New Zealand, which is at Rānui in West Auckland, called Earthsong. And just in a very concrete example, there are 34 households there. They have one lawnmower. So not only are they saving on all the parts and costs and running costs of 33 other lawnmowers, but the built cost of housing 33 lawnmowers. I was down at Bunnings the other day, I walked an entire aisle down there and I counted exactly 33 lawnmowers. That's a long lot of space. So we are looking at clustering our housing so that it actually opens up more green space. And so that brings into question for the council ways of supporting this type of housing, which is quite different from everybody having their own little section with their 6-foot high fences in between each other. It's useful in infill housing in Dunedin, but it poses some particular problems for those people who want to develop co-housing in a rural environment. And they're much more likely to want to cluster their housing and then be able to sustainably farm the other part of their land rather than spread it in large blocks of land with one house per large block. And we want to find ways in which that can be addressed.
So one of the things that particularly concerns us with this annual plan is the increase in development fees. We are a not-for-profit organisation. We are people of very moderate means, and we are offering benefits to the city by this new modelling of housing, by using fewer resources and infrastructure when we recycle our own grey water and collect rainwater. And the new development fees that are proposed would probably put us out of existence. Our group, the Urban Co-housing Ōtepoti at the High Street School, we are hoping to put our resource consent in before the 1st of July, but we're very aware of the impact this is going to have on later co-housing developments. So Sarah, do you want to talk?
I'd just like to talk about social housing. Very early in our development, we decided that we didn't want to be an exclusive middle-class development. We wanted to be open to our benefits of co-housing to be open to everybody. So we would like the council to give consideration to joining in partnership with us to be able to provide social housing. And I'd just like to point out the particular unique benefits that we can provide. I'll just read the relevant part. Cooperative decision-making and social processes developed internationally over 4 decades deliberately foster cooperation, trust, equality and social connection. Building design and site layout also facilitate community building. There's a lot of people in the community that don't have the means to buy in that would really benefit from our development.
Thank you. Just before you're okay? Just before we go to questions, obviously we're going to discuss the matters you raised that are specifically relevant to the annual plan, but the wider issues you talk about in terms of the rural setting in particular have already been discussed actually in terms of the second generation district plan, which is currently under preparation. So I'm really alerting you to the fact that in due course, when that's notified, you'll be back with the submission process. Thank you for being involved in advance. Now, questions anywhere? Councillor McTavish, you must have one.
I've had the benefit of an hour with these wonderful people, so I don't need to ask any questions.
Councillor Calver.
I can see the advantages in living some of those ways. I'm wondering whether you would want us to make rules, if we were making rules, that encapsulated some of those things or all of them, or is it just your own group that you feel has got a unique contribution here? What I'm thinking is, for example, would we then want to say anybody who wants to do this sort of housing, could you set aside 2 of them and we'll own 2 of them in a corner? Would you want to say this sort of thing could only happen if you're using your grey water and things and you're all squeaky clean, or what would be the rules around it as far as you would propose?
I guess at this point we're really asking for a conversation about the model of co-housing. So the model of co-housing is very clearly that people have their own private unit that they can buy and sell in the open market, and there is shared facilities, green space and a common house. So this is a particular form of housing. It can take all sorts of different architectural shapes. So we want a conversation to see how the council can actually encourage this and enable this type of housing, rather than blanket rules that really don't fit. I mean, we're really struggling because none of the institutional structures in this country yet support co-housing. The banking institutions, the legal institution and council institutions, whereas in comparison in Denmark, which has a similar population to New Zealand, it's just under 5 million, there are 700 co-housing communities, and every second building consent currently is for a co-housing community. People are on waiting lists to go into it because they now, after 30 and 40 years of developing this, have the kind of supports mechanisms in place in these 3 different kinds of institutions, and you just are one part of it. And so we're wanting to start a conversation about how we can enable and work together for the benefit of the wider community.
I think it's a very exciting proposition that you're raising. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you. I love this comment in your handout about consensus being misunderstood and becoming tyranny by the dissenter. Really resonates. In your submission, though, there's a comment saying that numbers of private vehicles are reduced and organised carpooling is built into the lifestyle, along with a greater use of public transport and more cycling and walking. Noting that this particular co-housing project in High Street is quite far up the hill, I wonder how important those last 3 things are in particular, public transport, cycling and walking infrastructure, to the things that you can control, that is the development. I mean, without those 3 things, how well will this function?
I mean, one of the reasons that we were really chasing that site is within walking distance. I mean, I walk further than that every day to get down to town. You know, it's a 20-minute at the most walk to the Octagon, and there's buses that go up and down High Street, and maybe a cable car one day might come back.
Yeah, I already live there and cycle, but I used to cycle when I lived in Portobello, which obviously commented on my personal submission. But we're right next to the bus stop. The bus goes every 30 minutes, so we've got great services at the side.
Or twice every hour, if I remember right.
Sorry, twice, what did I say?
Every hour, yeah.
Twice an hour, that's right.
Cool. Thanks.
Councillor Thompson.
Just with regard to the development contributions, have you attempted to cost out what the development contributions might mean in this particular site?
150,000
What did you answer that?
Our rough calculation is looking at 25 units being developed. If they were all at the $5,300 new figure, that would be about 150,000.
Well, that's not quite the question I asked. You've just said that it would be at the maximum figure for each of them. Have you actually looked at what it might actually be in reality?
I think that was done by an architect per bedroom. So
the difficulty is because it's on an old school site. There's no calculation as to how many credits, deemed credits, they have. So that needs to be a conversation with our planning team.
And the development contributions policy would allow such a conversation to take place. So I think that's important. But my other question is, have you talked with Abbeyfield at all?
no, because I'm very aware of the Abbeyfield concept. It's a very different concept from co-housing. It's a very different model. It is very different.
That suggests a certain rigidity in your thinking as well, with respect. It's a different form of living that's applicable to that particular age group, who might well see a significant affinity with being able to be adapted into a community that has a lot of younger people in it as well. So, and who are also, just like yourselves, struggling with how they implement this.
I think the Abbeyfield's proposal is about existing units. It's not about building new.
Sorry, that's not a question to the submitter, councillor. If you're entering a debate with councillor,
and I apologise, I was entering a debate. Listen, I'm extremely supportive of what you're trying to do, so don't misunderstand my question.
We need to look at different models that are already in existence. I think even looking at the Somerset model at Bishop's Court and some of the things they've done, I think is really important for us. So yeah, you're correct.
Thank you, councillor Hall.
Did you know that up in the Queenstown area, some of the big farms are being split up, or sheep stations are being split up in a similar way, with co-housing, and then they'll take a share of the farm? it's happening up in the Northie area now, and councillors have talked to me, councillors here have been actually talking to me about similar things around me.
We want to be really clear that we are talking about a particular model that is called co-housing, there are other community housing, social housing, Abbey Fields, shared communal living housing, but we aren't that. We're a particular model that is widespread in Northern Europe and North America. And there are lots of cooperative ventures, but they're not co-housing.
All right, that's it then. Thank you very much for your presentation and the material you've left with us. The conversation has certainly begun. Have a pleasant evening. Thank you. The next two councillors, we have 4 more submitters, and with one exception, they're individual. 5? I'm sorry, one more. Alex King. Is Alex there, please?
Yep, that's me.
Oh. What would you like to talk to us about, sir?
Right, well, mostly about warm houses. I'll just start.
You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'll just start off with comments about the cycling into Portobello. Though I lived in the Portobello area for 2 years and commuted via cycle to Dunedin, and I think that the most important part to do first is the park close to town, the Vauxhall sort of end of things as well. I don't envy your task. I was here yesterday when the Broad Bay people came and gave their submission, and I don't envy your task, trying to work out who to give weight to, and if you can do it all at once, that would be the best, but that's just my opinion on that one. So, work your magic on that.
Can you pull that microphone a bit closer, please?
Sure. But what I mostly want to talk about is the cosy home stuff. Dunedin has pretty cold houses. The housing stock in Dunedin is pretty old. It's pretty cold. It's not very well insulated. People who are poor can't afford to heat it to a healthy level. As you may know, the WHO recommendations are 18 degrees in the rooms that you're living in, and 16 for bedrooms overnight. And so I'd like to congratulate the council for participating in this thing where Blue Skin Trust and a whole lot of different organisations are partnering to try and improve the housing stock in Dunedin. And I'd like to make a plug and to make a request that council fund some of that work to evaluate the individual homes and to provide the information and some support to let homeowners make the improvements they need to make to their houses. You may be aware that I've seen figures quoted that the amount of money spent on insulation and improving homes in that way, you get a 7-to-1 return in terms of savings on health costs and things like that, which may not come back directly to the council, but would be a great benefit to the citizens and to Dunedin. But when I talk to people who come from overseas, they mostly shocked by the standard of housing and what Dunedin citizens put up with in terms of old cold houses. So you read some other points in my submission, but that's the main one that I'd like to bring to the council's attention today.
And you're happy to take some questions?
Yes, I am.
Thank you very much. First, any questions anywhere? All right, everyone agrees with you. Thank you very much, Joe. Could I ask Joe Miller and whoever else might be with the group to come up, please?
It's just me, thank you. Nobody else is game enough to come
Welcome, We know there are lots more of you out there, Joe. It's all right. Welcome, and you, as an organisation, you've got up to 10 minutes, and then questions if you're happy about it. So
Thank
the floor
you.
is yours.
Firstly, I'd like to say I'm pleased I'm on this side of the table, not round that side, because I'm going to say thank God it's Friday and you're going to be saying roll on Saturday. But however, thank you very much for staying so late to listen to us. There are a couple of matters that we really want to raise again, and one of them, of course, is the situation of crossing over King Edward Street near McBride Street. I came to a forum last year and I spoke at the forum, and Councillor Vandervis and Councillor Noon came out to have a look at the situation with some council staff members. Originally, when we had spoken to the project manager before the changes took place out in King Edward Street, we asked for a pedestrian crossing somewhere close to the Westpac Bank, only to be told that it was too close to the one that was at the National Bank, or the then National Bank, which is now the ANZ Bank. However, after the visit from the councillors and their staff, we had a courtesy crossing put outside Brocklebanks, which is even closer to the bank, to the pedestrian crossing at the ANZ, which has solved nothing at all, because nobody seems to know it is a courtesy crossing except the poor pedestrian who wants to cross the road and can't get across. Cars are certainly not stopping there, and I'm quite sure they are unaware that there even is one. The only change out there where that area is the walkway to get off the footpath onto the road. There's no markings, there's no signs, there's no nothing. It's achieving nothing at all, and we are still in the situation where people are using the hump outside the Westpac Bank as a pedestrian crossing. And there are two posts at one side, which I mentioned to the lady from the council staff member that was out there, and I said to her, this is what's happening. And she watched as a couple stood between the posts and waited for cars to stop and then went across the road. And she said, well, the posts are to indicate they're humps. Well, I wasn't going to tell her I was that ignorant in my 70s that I didn't even know that till then. But however, what's happened now is there are now two cycle stands just being placed at the end of the hump outside Westpac Bank, which people are now using as rail on either side to wait for the cars to stop for them to cross the road. So in actual fact, there's been no bikes there, with all due respect, but there's been plenty of pedestrians using it as a handstand till they can get across. I really would sincerely ask council to really revisit that, or do something at least about where that so-called courtesy crossing is. This morning I watched a lady with a stick trying to wait to go across there, gave up in the end, went further down outside the Nanking and weaved her way across the traffic to get into her car. I actually spoke to her and I said, did you not realise that you should be able to cross there? And she said, look, it's just a waste of time. I give up every time. Nobody seems to see me there. The other compounding factor is at the Cargill's Corner. And I'm really seriously asking council to consider putting back the barn stance there. Now, I stood on that corner numerous times just to keep an eye on what's going on. Repeatedly, we have people crossing the road across on the side that used to have, well, across, shall I say, Claire Curran's Corner, and they on mobility scooters, walkers, like me, a bit doddery on their feet, and because of that, the turning traffic can't go. The traffic behind can't go anywhere, because the next lane is to turn right into Hillside Road. Repeatedly, we get 3 cars through there and the lights change. So it's ending up with some frustration where I've actually watched cars inching round that corner, virtually intimidating pedestrians to stop on the crossing to let them through. So I really do need to think it would be much more beneficial if we could all cross the road like that and let the cars go wherever they want to, when they want to. However, on perhaps a little bit more positive sort of a note, I would really seriously suggest that if you are thinking of a library in South Dunedin, that we push it ahead. one of the ideas of having the changes in the structure of the footpaths and the seating and the trees and things out there was to encourage people to come out into South Dunedin and make it more attractive. What I feel is failing out there is that if people have to come into town to get their library books, they're not going to get off and shop in South Dunedin with their books, they're going to get their shopping here and go home. If we could have a library out there, I would be prepared, if the council was in agreement, to work to putting in a little drop-in centre in it, i.e. they could come in, have a cup of tea, a cup of coffee. I would work to get volunteers to put into it so that we do something constructive out there. And I believe if we could make a little community hub in that library area where people can, oh well, I'll see you at the library or I'll see you there, it will start to bring that community situation back in. We have still got a lot of empty shops out there, and I really feel it could be a way of engendering a little bit more interest in the area. And I wonder whether council has ever looked at the two empty shops on either side of King Edward Street that are quite big, and whether it may be worthwhile looking at those as to whether it may be a starting point to something later on. The other point I would like to mention is that there has been some talk about whether the council should take over the bus services. And I know from the discussions at our meetings that our members would be very grateful if they would do that, because the perception is that the regional council isn't really interested in who wants to move around in Dunedin and who wants to go where. And I believe it became compounded when I had a call from a local social group who was run by the bus company that they had organised the bus for their outing for their club, to tell them there were cruise ships in and they didn't have a bus that they could give them. Now when we've got to the stage where we can't get our elderly residents out on a social outing because the bus companies are committed to the cruise ships, where is the priority? Is it in the people of Dunedin, or is it in the money that can be made out of cruise ships, which we sure as heck don't get any value out of? So that's, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your generous offer. That's the sort of thing we were thinking of when this discussion about the shop front or pop-in, drop-in library was discussed originally. And I think, depending on whatever decision rather, the council makes in confirming the annual plan, that will trigger activity one way or another. Councillor Vanderbus.
Just briefly, Joe, I do apologise that there hasn't really been any solution found to your McBride Street Westpac intersection crossing issue. I just wanted to know, are you aware that we've asked staff to do what they can, and that what they tell us is that you can't have a crossing on that intersection because of the number of turning cars coming out of McBride Street and the statistical safety issue that brings about? Apparently you're just not allowed to do it.
And that, Councillor Vanderbus, was why when we originally spoke to the project manager before the development was even started, we asked whether they would consider putting lights at McBride Street with a crossing there. And I was told at that time that it was not feasible, and repeated requests to know why it wasn't feasible have just received no response whatsoever.
So would your preference then be to have a set of stoplights at McBride King Edward?
Certainly.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone agrees with everything else you've said, obviously, Joe. Thank you for taking the trouble to come in.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy the remainder of your Friday night and weekend.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillors, we have 3 more 5-minute submitters, so I know 2 of you have to go at 7, but we should be close to being finished by then. No one else will be able to leave or we'll lose the quorum. So, Councillor Bazette.
No,
you decided to stay. Simon Rose.
We've got a comfortable quorum.
Thank you, Councillors. Appreciate it's late. I'm here to speak in my capacity as Chair of Portobello Board of Trustees. I've only got a 5-minute slot because I forgot to tick the right box. And your administration very kindly found me 5 minutes, so I will do my utmost to keep to that time frame. I've completed a supplemental submission, which I will talk to briefly now. So I think it was fairly clear from our submission that we're very keen to keep the Portobello option current for the cycle way. Now this is because it confers significant benefit to the local communities, not only Portobello but also Port Bay, and improves road safety for all users, in particular from those 2 schools and those other pre-learning facilities that are there. The cycleway goes a long way to resolving a lot of safety issues within the Portobello Township in particular. There is a main road to cross twice, and unlike the reference that Adrian, who was actually moved on, with 3 of my children, and those were the 3 children that walk along that road every morning, there is no safe footpath for the majority of school children. They have to cross the road once, and then they have to cross it again to get to the particular school. There are footpaths that are absent in some sections. The school is unfortunately located on a line, which means that we have a blind corner towards the Tyrone head end and a blind summit going towards the school from town. There is a road intersection where the main Highcliffe Road comes down, and also from the old aquarium, and also from the roads that comes out. I was trying to see anyway, there are four roads that intersect there. There is a cutting that leads to the school. There is really no provision in that cutting for any pedestrian access. Now there is a path that leads up past the church and to the play centre and the back end of the school there, but it is in grave disrepair, and it's not. So there is no particular area for pedestrians or cars to run up, and children can certainly not cycle up this path. So if we're to continue to encourage our children to cycle to school, there really is no provision to do that. And I'd like to say also that for the children across from Tenney Street, which is right opposite Portobello School, visibility is remarkably reduced because the road is just simply not wide enough, and the cycleway would certainly improve that. On the roadway leading into Portobello, many of you know this has been passed many times due to high spring tides, and a lot of detritus on the road. The cycleway would improve that. The roadway between Portobello and Broad Bay has many bends. I'm not going to go into this. You've heard many submissions about the dangers on that road. I myself had 1 accident on that road. I'm part of that statistic, and I have 3 near misses. I actually consider that section of road the most dangerous on the peninsula. I've lived on the peninsula for 10 years. I travel in 5 to 6 days a week. That's 5,000 journeys, and never have I had as many near misses on any other section of the road than that actual section. The economic growth in wildlife tourism is to absolutely be embraced, and it has huge benefits for Dunedin, the economy as a whole. Unfortunately, the peninsula communities directly pay the cost for that because of the tourist buses and the increased interest in the wildlife that these people come to Dunedin to see. So whilst I'm very supportive of that economic growth, something I believe has to be done to address the risks that it increases because of the tourist buses, the camper van, and the other visitors to those wildlife areas. Ultimately, the cycleway will also support safer pedestrian movement, and I think this is particularly not only for the pupils of the school, but we can see from the Cantry Bay that the elderly, the infirm, those with wheelchairs actually use these facilities greatly. And at the moment, that isn't possible. And if you're in a wheelchair, well, good luck trying to get on the other side of the road to Portobello and use that. I've also included some population data because I believe there were some questions about how many students were available on the peninsula. This is for information only. There are approximately 207 children under the age of 14 in the Portobello Broad Bay districts, compared to what I can tell from NZ stats being 159 from the combined Vauxhall, Tomahawk and Ocean Grove areas. If we adjusted those figures for those students that would actively use those areas of road, I think we can reasonably halve the number of figures towards the city end in terms of the children that are using it. My point here is simply that there are more children at the Tyrone head end of the peninsula that would benefit from this cycleway. As a board, we strongly support Sean Hogan's submission around the accident statistics and do believe that there may have been some mistakes made. Now, The only caveat to this is that the statistics as provided in the leaflet are somewhat misleading as to the danger of the road. Ultimately, both sections of road are dangerous. I believe both sections of road should be addressed as a matter of urgency. I'd like to also comment on the Portobello Boardwalk. There was a submission made by another submitter that we turned down the cycleway. This wasn't entirely true. We turned down the boardwalk, and this was for various reasons. The cycleway is still very much something that, as a community, we look to take advantage of. With regards to the rates question, I think it goes without saying that based on the wildlife tourism, the whole of Dunedin benefits, and to that degree I would not agree with targeted rates, but I would certainly agree with a general rate rise for the whole of Dunedin to benefit from that. Look, I want to draw it to a close there because I know we're very short of time, but I would really strongly urge from a board perspective, the safety of our children is paramount. The community benefits are clear, and the cycleway would add to what is already a thriving local township on the peninsula, and we certainly encourage you to take this into your considerations when you deliberate around which section to start first. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon, and thank you for helping with the time and being concise. Councillor Thompson.
Do you have a sense of how many of your pupils are delivered to school versus walk to school versus cycle to school at the moment?
I would suggest that given the volume of cars and the car parking issues that we have at Portobello, a large number of our children are certainly picked up, but I would say almost half of them walk to and from school currently.
And those that walk, what route would they take now? Would it be along the inland side of Portobello Road?
No, as you're probably aware from where the Coronation Hall is, the majority of the Portobello populace is on the town side of that, and a lot of students are drawn from that area. So they'll walk down to where Coronation Hall is, cross the road at that point, then walk along the other side of the road, past the dairy and the garage, towards the blind summit, where they would cross over again to try and make a secure pathway up past the graveyard and onto the school that way.
There's a ditch on the other side, isn't there?
Sorry?
There's a ditch on the other side, isn't there?
Yes, that's correct, yeah. So in answer to the question, they walk on the side somewhere.
So they're crossing that road now, they will still cross that road?
They will still have to cross the road. We have no choice there because of the way that the pavements are laid out.
One of the obvious very real difficulties here for us, or here for me, I can't speak for anybody else, but is that we're trying to weigh up relative risks, and let me be blunt here, on the one hand we have a group of submitters who are saying, well, these are children so the relative risk is much higher. And then we have another group of submitters who are saying we're on a piece of the road where, unlike at the other end, which may be imperfect, there is at least some other places you can walk or go, but at this end there's nowhere you can go other than in the drink or in front of the car. And the difficulty of contrasting those two disparate risks is immense. And
and the question, Councillor, is?
Well, the question is,
do you agree?
No, it's not. The question is not, do you agree? The question is I know what your answer is going to be, but is the risk, does it matter that one part of the route has, not for everybody, but for a significant chunk, alternative ways of getting to school, and the other part of the route doesn't have alternative ways of avoiding the risk?
I don't envy your decision. I think you've got some great challenges or great challenges to deliberate over this. Ultimately, my interest is for the school children and their access to safe ways of getting to school. And I know that the cycleway through Portobello in particular will dramatically reduce their risk. And so as an organisation, as Portobello School, I absolutely have to have to support that and urge you to consider that. But at the same time, I also understand that other road users and cyclists at the Vauxhall end also face similar levels of risk.
Okay. Councillor McTavish. No, you've given up. All right.
Councillor Thompson asked me a question.
Thank you very much, Simon.
Thank you very much. Good night.
I've got a tongue-in-cheek one. With one crash and 3 near misses, do you think you could be the problem?
I just hope, according to the statistics, I'm not up for another one.
Georgina have.
I'm adding this question.
It's tongue-in-cheek.
Hi, I'm not Georgie. This is Georgie.
Georgie.
Hello, hello.
This is actually a joint submission.
That's fine. You have 2.5 minutes each then. You divide your 5
we don't want
minutes.
to take any more than 5 minutes.
Divide your 5 minutes up as you choose.
So we've just printed out.
We printed out a few more copies of the part of our proposal with pictures.
Pass those around. That would be great. Thank you. I've started the clock.
It might be a situation of sharing one between two of you. So we're going to make this quite brief because it's obviously the end of a long week for you guys, and we really appreciate being given the opportunity to speak to our proposal that we've submitted to the annual plan. I hope you all had the chance to read it. There was a fair amount of effort that went into it. We think we've made a pretty comprehensive case for why we should be considering creating a pedestrian precinct in the CBD of Dunedin. As a Dunedinite, I was born and raised in Dunedin, and Georgie has been here for a number of years, basically a naturalised Dunedinite. One of the awkward situations that I think a lot of Dunedinites have experienced is when you have friends or family visiting, having to explain why you think Dunedin is a great place. And oftentimes people come for a brief visit and it will be rainy and they kind of see it as a damp kind of southern outpost. And one of the things that I notice is that I always point to, not to Dunedin city itself, but to where we're located and to the access that we have to tremendous places such as the peninsula and how connected we are to the natural world. But I think the city itself is not as lacking as far as being a modern city, and that's something that is a pretty serious issue as far as attracting and retaining especially young people. And it does have quite a wide-ranging impact, the image that we project, and we really think that starting with the CBD and thinking about things like pedestrianising is a serious step towards creating a modern city. And I'll pass it on to Georgia there.
Yeah, so as Alexis said, I'm a naturalised Dunedin citizen. I've been here for 8 years now, and when I first moved down here, my main impression was, where's the CBD? And I think a lot of young Dunedinites or people who are come and study in Dunedin do feel that Dunedin CBD is missing a heart, and we've written this proposal because we strongly believe that a pedestrian precinct could form that heart of Dunedin city and be the sort of like a visual showpiece. In addition, it's actually in line with a lot of things that council has already accepted in terms of strategy documents. We've outlined where it meets the Dunedin City Integrated Transport Strategy from last year and the spatial plan. If you've read our proposal, you will know we've put quite a lot of work into this, and we feel like we've made a strong case. We're also asking for a trial, and we're asking for a trial because we understand the financial pressures of council budget. And we're not asking necessarily for a huge investment by the DCC at this point. And one of the main benefits of a trial is that it doesn't need to be expensive, and you only need to look at the Port Chalmers trialling their 30k per hour speed limit over the cruise ship season, which cost him, I think, just under $6,000. And that came out of a minor safety improvements budget. So, yeah, we've been a little bit strategic in how we've approached.
Basically, we want to give you as few excuses as possible. Not to take it seriously. That's basically.
And so we feel like we've put forward a really solid case, and we're really looking forward to hearing your response to that.
Well, can I begin that response? Because I'm delighted to see this proposal. I'd like to compliment you, as I'm sure my colleagues would, on the amount of work you've put into it with others and the professionalism of that work. And I think strategically it is time for the city, personally, it is time for the city to actually pick up the pace on the situation in terms of the street works and urban design, where we did lead the way and have been caught up and passed by other copiers around the country. So I think this is great, and I think also that the suggestion of a trial is very smart, because that's a great way at very low cost of seeing whether something does work or not and whether it's liked by the population. So, having said that, there wasn't a question. Are there any? Councillor Lord, sorry?
I put it down as one, it's long enough.
Thank you.
I do have one question. I've often thought that we should have a closed space, and I've often thought about from George Street right down to, is it the street past the Meridian, the one that's on the corner of, I'm not sure, is it Hanover? And I've just wondered, I realise my concern would get huge resistance, but had you thought about that as an option?
Yeah, we absolutely had. In fact, that was our initial, the area that we initially focused on. Because at first, maybe because we spend more time in that part of town being students, we spoke to transport planners, and they suggested that would be very difficult because it's a much more important route for buses and for cars. There is a point, I think it's on the town side of Hanover, is that right? Where pedestrian traffic does, from that point onwards towards the Octagon, outnumber cars.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. So it's the next block. It's the block between the Five-Way and Hanover, where pedestrian traffic outnumbers car traffic. So we focused on that initially, but after having a few discussions with the council's transport planners, we decided that this was a great place to start, because you can't really object to it on the basis of it interfering with any major transport routes. And it's logistically.
What about the other option, having an in-between where private motor vehicles can't go through, but perhaps buses still could travel through, and delivery vehicles at certain times? Is that an option in your minds?
Yeah, so in our executive summary, we point out the difference between pedestrianisation and a shared space. And then the type of exceptions that you're talking about, we actually went through in section 4 of our proposal. So you wouldn't necessarily have private motor vehicles going through, but of course you need to maintain access for emergency services, because there are a whole lot of bars in that area, or anywhere you have people, you need to have access for emergency services. Businesses were very concerned about needing loading access, because a lot of them only have, access can only be obtained through the lower Octagon. And so it's something, you could envisage a situation where you had a delivery time between 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. in the morning, each morning, or
I think
similar.
Yeah, I think with regard to George Street, we would both support that. Why we focused on this was that we thought a complete transformation, making a pedestrian precinct, was much more of a showpiece than that, which is as an option that we would be very supportive of. Anything that encourages active transport and basically changing the space and making it more friendly to other modes of transport, in particular pedestrians.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
This is going to have a question, but just given these examples set by the Chair, I'm a retailer, and I think this is a brilliant idea. The the nature of the materials influence the behaviour of the people who are there. And I know that your sketches are purely examples, but they're very hard. There's no softening, and I wonder, do you have a sense of whether that's important? Does it make a difference, or is that just by, you know?
Well, I'll answer completely honestly. I don't like the octagon very much. I'm not someone who tends to go out on. I actively avoid it on busy nights at the moment, and my hope is that, and from the research that we've done, there is a lot that can be done with for instance, crime prevention through environmental design. It's that kind of the idea that the way that you design the city landscape has a huge influence on people's behaviour, and I think a lot more than we give it credit for. But it's very hard to find. It's something that's very hard to find hard evidence for. But that is a sense, and that is something that is reported in literature. So this is a book that we've drawn on quite heavily. Young Gal, you may have heard of the documentary made on his work that featured Christchurch City and rebuilt Christchurch. He talks extensively about that sort of idea, and the sketches were actually
not done by Dunedin, and I'm not necessarily prescriptive, but merely to kind of
sure,
give you an imagination, an idea of what it could look like, and particularly because if we're for the purposes of a trial, it's important not to invest in permanent infrastructure if it's not necessarily something that will be permanent at the beginning of the trial, although we hope it will. But so it wouldn't necessarily look exactly like the pictures.
Councillor Calvert.
I like the idea. I'd close off half the main street given a choice, but I'm wondering about the whether there's any concerns about people in Bath Street in particular, because there are some people who go from the Octagon through to Bath Street, for example, and there's people in Bath Street who would be quite seriously affected. Now, that doesn't mean that they wouldn't all love it. I just have a feeling that some of them may be concerned, and I'm wondering about age concern. For example, who's got, there'd be a lot of thinking to be done around some of that, and that would be, and if you did a trial, the issue about a trial there is a trial would, of necessity, not solve some of the problems that you could solve in a permanent way in Bath Street if you had the will. So I'm just wondering whether you've been thinking about the Bath Street people.
We certainly have, and we've actually spoken to the majority of businesses in the area concerned. With Bath Street, we did scratch our heads over that quite a lot, and we spoke to the council's transport planners. It seems that the only way would be to have at least an egress from there, because you couldn't have two-way traffic. It would be really difficult at the George Street. So you would need an exit. So we would. What I have in mind and what I took from talking to the transport planners was a one-way route out of there. So I guess the lower part of the area would have a car lane that exits, and ideally that would be designed so according to the principles of kind of the shared space, where you would really have this kind of blurred distinction between the road and the footpath, and cars would travel, at walking pace out of that, because there are parking lots there, and age concern needs to have good access. However, we spoke to, I can't remember his name, one of the, okay, yeah.
He said don't mention my name.
Okay.
Shall we take the next question? Before you divulge a secret, obviously. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you. Thanks both of you for a very thorough and very considered submission. I'm excited to have this forced onto our agenda. I think a serious conversation about this is long overdue, personally. I have two questions, one more serious than the other. Given the illustrations, how attached are you to bunting? Middlemarch love it, apparently. So,
And the serious question?
putting aside the response and reception you've had from transport planners and your own wise strategic plan of trialling this and trialling it in a very selective area, eventually, where would you like to see this go? How broad would you like to see this pedestrian area be, or is this the extent of the ambition?
Well, it depends a lot on the success of the trial, I think, in the particular area. I think we kind of think of the lower octagon, the area that we've indicated, as a sort of proof of concept or proof of principle, and so it could then be applied to other parts of the central city, other streets. So we first started, as Alexia previously said, on the idea of halfway George Street, and that turned out to be not so feasible for reasons that Alexia already mentioned. And one of the other things that people suggested to us then was look at the arterial streets like Canberra and St Andrews Street and maybe just pedestrianise one of those blocks, because you don't necessarily need to have all three of them perpendicular to George Street with cars going down them. In terms of the octagon itself, the friend who actually did the bunting and obviously enjoys bunting, I didn't ask him to put it in or take it out, but he actually said, oh, do you reckon that you'll do the upper octagon, the lower octagon is successful? And I think that depending of course on the success of what happens in the lower octagon, then something in the upper octagon could be looked at as well, maybe maintaining the main carriageway through, but a similar thing.
I might add to that, if you're talking a bit more generally and a bit more long term, I think that pedestrianisation is something where a lot of the time it really benefits, if we could pedestrianise a big area of central Dunedin that's within good walking distance. So obviously from the five-way intersection, Frederick Street and whatnot, down to here is all within about, for most of us, 10-15 minutes of walking. That would have to, that would involve a change to public transport routes, and also to the way that I think it would require an increase in public transport. So it would have to be an integrated change at that point. This is really designed so that it can be implemented in isolation and so that it's feasible.
Just one last thing. Have you looked at issues around wind in the octagon and the way that it can act as a wind tunnel, which obviously has some effect on the amenity value of spending time in that area?
Yeah, that issue was brought up by a number of retailers. They were particularly concerned about if there were no cars and it's awful weather, would there be any people even able to get to their shops? And I mean,
I would suggest that that is something to be considered, but I would leave that in the hands of like urban designers who hopefully have I think they're design.
And Councillor Wiley has our final question on this matter.
I think this is a brilliant submission. I'm not totally sold on it. The one thing that I would suggest is having a look at Manners Mall and talking to the retailers in Manners Mall in Wellington and seeing some of the issues they've faced and how they've dealt with them. My thought is, why would you just say for the first part of the trial, or if we took it step, say just start with Bath Street up?
So Manners Mall in Wellington, I'm a Wellingtonian. That's an interesting example to choose to compare to the octagon. Why would?
Well, because you've got retailers, you've got access problems, you've got...
Okay, so just around the corner you've got Cougars.
Delivery services, things like that.
Yeah.
So if you're talking talking about people trying to get their
So
services in business.
Matters Mall in particular was a unique example where it was a historical...
It was a fruit road. It was sort of fruit road.
What's the question?
I'm trying to...
Yeah, but so Cuba Street, which is literally just around the corner from the bottom of Matters Mall, is a pedestrianised area and was New Zealand's first pedestrian precinct. It was like done in 1969, I think, from memory. Matters Mall used to be pedestrianised and was recently... Yeah, it's now open and it's a bus lane only, and it was to save time for the bus routes. I don't really see the lower octagon needing to be open to save time for bus routes. So I'm just wondering why you've chosen Matters Mall as an example of it.
No, one of the things I didn't realise that open Matters Mall, like when I grew up there, they were closing it off.
Right.
So I'd always knew it as being closed. The part that, one of the issues I saw in the submission was that people being able to access their business and couriers and things like that. And my thought was, how do the businesses in Matters Mall get serviced by couriers and deliveries and things like that? So that may have been able to avoid the issue that some of the retailers had. The key part I look at is from Bath Street up. To me, it seems like a far easier, and it's more bar activity than that.
Yeah, I think effectively, by recognising the fact that you can't really close off Bath Street because it's, and we do in the document, it's too narrow for a cul-de-sac, and also you can't really have two-way exit on the other end. That's probably unfeasible, we're told. We recognise the fact that the lower part of that block of Stewart Street would probably resemble more a shared space. And we take, make it quite clear in this that we're really talking about pedestrianisation or shared space for the sake of not repeating ourselves at every sentence. Basically, we choose to refer to it as pedestrianisation, but I think they would both be a really positive change. And I think that's probably what it would have to be.
Cashel Mall and Christchurch have done courier delivery.
We are having a conversation with councillors, so let's wrap it up there. We are all under time pressure. Thank you very much, both of you, and would you pass on our appreciation to your colleagues, whether or not they like bunting. This is a great presentation. Thank you very much for your initiative.
Thank you all very much.
Yeah, thank you.
And can I invite our happy last submitter, Philip Perro. No one else is expecting to speak. We haven't missed anyone. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Right, I will keep this very short and very sweet. I realise you would all like to get home. I'd just like to reaffirm my support for the current plan of the Portobello or Peninsula Road widening. I'm coming from the perspective of a current firefighter in the Portobello Volunteer Fire Brigade. I've been involved, assisted with quite serious crashes on that road. Obviously there are crashes throughout the whole of the peninsula, but our area goes from Grassy Point out to the Heads. So I have been involved in various incidents there. I think by widening the road we would lessen the chances of these incidents happening, especially in the severity of some of them. One of them especially being a 3-car with 2 head-ons, one coming up behind the other between Harwood and Portobello. It's lucky that there was actually no fatalities. I know that as part of that current plan to widen that section as well. I know it doesn't have a pedestrian walkway, but it is about widening that road and making it safe for everyone. Like I said, basically, I mean, for all of us, we want the whole road wide, so that everybody can be safe. I mean, I've commuted from town out to Toroa Head. I've worked over the whole peninsula, and I can see the dangers throughout the whole of the road. Myself personally, I have to support our community, okay, because I think at the heart of it, this is about community. Okay, this is what cities are. They are all these little communities that make up the city. and by extending the road between Broad Bay and Harwood. Okay, I know that part of that section's already been done between Harwood and between Portobello and Weir Road. But by doing that, we are actually bringing these three communities together, okay, which is basically creating a bigger community, you know, and for us, that's what we're about out on the peninsula. We are about community, you know. I know we only have one hotel, but we only have one shop, one boat club, but by joining these together, you're creating that access for everyone. I do have 2 kids at Broad Bay School and I live in Portobello. I would love to see them cycle to Broad Bay School. If it goes with different options, I can't see that happening. But basically, that's all I've got to say. So,
thank you, Philip. You will have, from heard the conversation around the earlier submissions, you know that this is an issue that is going to exercise us.
Yes.
Questions, councillors? That's it then. Thank you very much for
good luck
keeping
everyone.
your side of the market. And I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you. Thank you, John, for hanging on.
Sorry, can we just say a special thank you to the staff who have gone through without any chance of saying, asking a question or information, because they've been absolutely fabulous, especially the GSIs who've kept us running. And congratulations to the ODT and the Dunedin channel TV people for doing this, because it's been a very long time.
Thank you for that, Kate. And can I remind people to collect their decision folders?